There you go. Just coming through.
I still can't get that one on here. That monitor still won't come on.
It's on that day, but it's not on today, right?
It wasn't on at the last meeting either.
We may have to. Yeah, did you try to get it remote?
Ready?
Hey. All right, I want to call the meeting to order. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. First, let's stand. Could you pray for us, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and give you honor, glory, and praise. Thank you for your love and mercy and grace you may do for us. Lord, just watch over and guide us, help us draw together and work together for the betterment of our county. These are gifts we fill in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
What are we gonna watch?
It's all had
As you all can tell, I am not feeling good. If I have to get up and leave, that's gonna come up for me. But I have tested 5 days in a row and I do not have COVID, but I am not doing good.
Well, anytime you need to get out, just feel free to. Okay, this first meeting, we're gonna have 2 separate ones. This is our public hearing for our 2023 budgets, and then at 7, we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll open our regular meeting. So, at this time, I want to open the public hearing.
We have a comment from the stormwater department here.
Okay.
Okay. Do I need to approach the front or do we can everyone hear me okay? Okay.
You do whatever you're
Okay.
comfortable with.
Yeah, so I'm Corbin Averill. I'm with the Owen County Stormwater Conservation District, the chairman of the board here with me. I got Steve Fox and Dudley and Sean Huss. So I know we just wanted to mention here as far as the chance to address the council here. I think there was some confusion at the previous hearing or previous budget meeting about the whole legality aspect of the line item when it goes to what you guys are paying us per year for our use of the office space, the rental space over here for our mortgage. And so we're looking at the budget line item, there's like $4,121 that was taken out completely from our budget this year. I just wanted to address the board. We wanted to just express our some talking points there. The fact that I realize we're very minuscule when it comes to all those things you guys have to deal with, but I just wanted to say if there is a down the road, we know there's going to be opportunities here for us to use it, but that funding is very important for our department as well, because we know that's money that we can't use to serve local farmers and local landowners now because we have to find other ways to fund for that rental. And I think this agreement was done several years ago before even I was on the board, that there was, before we even housed over the Pottersville Road office, we actually were working over at the Farm Bureau office, and then we were provided a monthly stipend basically from the council to help with the rental space over there, and that money was transferred over to this. So it really wasn't, you guys aren't owning or buying property necessarily or paying for our mortgage, it's more the money's being provided to the stormwater office, and we were using that money accordingly there. So that's why I just wanted to address the council here today to mention that. Open it up, I guess, to Sean or Steve, if you have any other comments you guys wanted to make there, clarify anything on that.
Well, I would really like to say that we have been dependent upon that funding to operate the office, and without it, we're going to have to come up with other sources of funding, and we don't know at the moment where we're going to get that money done.
I think the question was, because it was under mortgage, And I think we were wondering, why we were paying your mortgage when the county didn't own the property.
Yeah.
So I think, did you look into that?
Yeah, if I could, counsel. So the soil and water is basically the main statute that governs that is IC 1432-5. Then there's a whole series of sections. A couple things that I looked at. One, in different departments, there is a mandatory obligation that certain offices must be provided or staffed for. That does not seem to apply as far as in the case of soil and water, as far as is it mandatory what you pay for or not pay for. However, the statute is very, very broad as far as the fiscal body. It's 1432-5A. The fiscal body of each county that contains a district, soil and water district, whole or in part, may appropriate money for the use of that district serving the county for which appropriation is to be made. Wrap that all up, it's kind of Neo's choice. You have the authority to appropriate, in essence, what you think is appropriate for their district. They clearly have the authority as far as property. I mean, they can engage in contracts. I think that kind of the tie-up might be is really look at the most technical. I don't think that Owen County appropriation is actually an owner of the mortgage or paying for the mortgage. What looks like was developed in this at some point, and this point I could be wrong, so anyone please correct me, but I think historically there was a time where the rent was paid for them. They were able to secure it in a different location, and then the amount of that rent, just I think year after year, has been paid. So you clearly, as a fiscal body, it's really within your discretion, if you would like to, if you would not. Now, what I do believe, the question wasn't asked, but what I don't think could happen here, and it's not been asked, is the cumulative cap money that is to pay for all the public building. I do not believe like that can be used. So if Soil and Water would say, hey, we need, this is all hypothetical. They say, we need a new roof, commissioners, can you pay that? No, that would not be. But as far as the rent, I do believe this would fall within your province, whether you think it's an appropriation or not, but it is not binding the county to own this property.
Okay, thank you. I think another, if I remember right, another question was there was several $1,000s that were gonna go to replacement of the windows and different things like that. And we had a question on, since we didn't own the property, why were we paying for the replacement of the windows?
I believe, yeah, if I remember right, Sean had that listed in our request, as far as maintenance upkeep of the property, as far as we request that. That would have been an additional budget line. That wasn't on our current existing budget, so I think the concern more so was around this $4,100 that was going to be, now we don't have that at all. It goes from $4,100 to being zero to be able to fund the fact that we're going to have to house the facility and be a place to serve or basically customers or landowners of the county with us. So that was, I think, more concern. I think that was kind of like a wish list thing, the maintenance stuff. It wasn't really something we expected, but it's more to lose the rent payment in that process was more of a, that's what we wanted to address here today, more so than that. I said, we'll continue to look at other options for maintenance and fundraising items, things like that, get that kind of
So in the budget, is the 300 still in there for each month? At the moment, it is not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you guys had removed it out of there for the 2023 and it's added back, then you're gonna have to figure out where else to take it from out of what your proposed
Right.
budgets are tonight.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt, but this is not unprecedented. I can actually give you the lease agreement that we had through the council with Farm Bureau. When we were leasing their office and we were getting paid rent, I can actually hand that out. And I'll actually also hand out the 2022 approved budget and the 2023 approved budget.
That was the staff you had. She
I
has,
think we had it down on our regular meeting
yes.
to address this.
Okay, so you actually have those already. Just want to make sure.
Is the
Guys, ready to start?
So the,
Madam Chair, do we want to address this now or wait?
Well, that's what my question was. I mean, what place would be, the best place to address this? Because, like I said, it's not on our regular, would this be better to address it here or in our regular meeting?
Either way, you have to decide if you're gonna give them the funds or not. What you have advertised, what there's copies of for the $18 million does not include that. So if you're going to put it in there, you're gonna have to reduce from somewhere else because you cannot go over that 18 million for 25, because that was what was advertised.
Right.
So you're saying, Sheila, right now, to submit or make a motion, we've got a figure set, so we're gonna have to take from somewhere else if we would pass a motion to cover this expense.
and that's within the general fund though, so if there's some other offset.
There was, based on your action taken at your last meeting to increase the amounts for advertising, you increase the budget to the general fund budget. There was an extra $116,708 that is in the general fund. We put that in the commissioner's line item for now, it had to go somewhere. If you can reduce from that amount, but it's also kind of a cushion. If you spend all of it somewhere, then you've used that $116,000 that could be used. And again, right now it is sitting in other services. So if you take that $116,000 and you give them the $4,100, now you're down, you've reduced that.
But we have a little bit of time to be able to discuss this and,
You can discuss it in your other meeting, or you can bring it back for discussion and review it. You have October 27th is your your final adoption. Whatever you take into that meeting is what you have to give to the state. And again, you cannot go above the 18,425,000 there is. So you can still reduce stuff, you can still cut areas, clear up until October the 27th.
I'm gonna, my personal point of view is that we continue with the $4,100.
to make another motion.
I am.
Motion made by Andy,
I'll second.
seconded by Rick. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Second part of that motion, I need another motion that says to start reducing the 116,000 because you don't have anywhere else to take it from.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so the total amount is $342 per month. Times 12 is 4,104. Is that the correct amount then? Okay.
It was, 4121, I believe.
That's what we showed for last 2022.
4121.
Correct.
That brings us down to $112,587.
Are there any other public comments?
Yeah, take the opportunity at this time to speak.
I was gonna do that at
Fair
the
enough.
beginning of
Yep.
the regular meeting.
That's fine. Thank you.
So the other question is a technical thing for prep. What we usually do in this final month is because there've been a number of employee changes, we want to make sure all of our wage-related items are up to date and reflect the most recent snapshot. And usually the auditor's office goes through those line by line and then updates them for us by the time of adoption. So there was one recommendation in our wage committee work earlier about making sure we only do 2 decimals for expressing rates and things, and I'm assuming that's something that we maybe still want to do. The side effect of that, however, is that there's a couple of rate components that use that 3rd digit. And so can I get some kind of direction from the council that it's okay to round up whenever we do have a 3rd digit in there, just to make sure we get everything onto 2. It is gonna add up a little bit. The estimation that I have initially, particularly with longevity, let's see, it's probably going to be about a $7,200 cost system-wide. So, that includes general highway, everything in the system would be, that would be what the cost would come out to be. Not significant in the grand scheme of things, but I want to make sure you're aware of, that's what's going to happen if you round up to that 2nd digit. Is that something you want to do, or do you want to keep 3 digits?
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about raises. Are you talking about elected officials as well?
So this is for hourly or non-exempt positions because we express them in 3 digits. So if somebody is getting paid 15.185, that 5 is the part that's going to need to go away. So you'd basically round up to the nearest cent. And that may not sound like a huge difference, but when you multiply it over 100 and some people over so many years, that's what comes up to about a $7,000 cost.
So out of the 112,000 we have left, you're taking another, basically 7,200 out of that.
Well, that's only the general funds portion, so a portion of the 7,200 would be from the general, so it maybe be 2,500 of that, or 3,000 for the general, and then you've got EMS, you've got highway, so it's split out a bit, but that's the grand total system-wide. And we don't have to do it. I mean, I don't care. It's already programmed in our system. Payroll can take 3 digits, but it was just a suggestion that was brought up earlier in the year, and it's just a matter of making a decision on that.
So I guess my question is, whenever you talk about whether or not it's coming off the top, is, we have vacancies and such that affect, more than $7,200 across the board.
Yeah, I would anticipate there being a little bit of a wash considering the updates to employee data, because there are several individuals that have left employment in a 2-month period, and those numbers will kind of turn down as far as total wages in some areas. I don't have an estimation on that, but part of that cost, of course, would be offset from that in the bigger picture.
So you're asking to simplify it, which would be easier for the auditor?
Would it make a difference?
I mean, it would be simpler, but not all the budgets have extra money to do that with. You've advertised, so
I'm with you. I think.
Keep it at 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
7,200 is a lot of money right
That's
now.
what I was thinking.
All right, that's perfect, because that'll save a lot of trouble. I just wanted to bring it up for consideration, so.
I don't know if this is the time, I don't know. But I am very concerned about some of the elected officials, their pay. And I would like, before we cap everything, to talk about that, and we might do it in the regular meeting if you
Right, Saturday.
You can do it now, or you can do it in a
As
regular.
stated, any changes would come off the top because this is the budget we're submitting. So I don't really, my point of view, Madam President, I mean, it really doesn't matter where, but it's not gonna affect the budget. We kinda got what we got.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we give any raises, they gotta come out of that $100,000.
Right.
So, and then we don't even know if the state's gonna okay that.
Exactly.
We're just taking a shot in the dark, so we're hoping.
So out of that 112,000, you have to decide how much of a raise you wanna give to reduce it from what is available, if that's, or are you just gonna take the rest of the 112 and use it for salaries, and I mean, you have to give an amount.
Okay. I think Madam Chair, I'll address that in.
The other areas that, when you made a motion to increase, we added $79,799 to stone and gravel in the highway department, cause you had moved their budget up you rounded it off to the 3 million. Economic development was brought up to 1 million, so that was $195,868 increase. And then, the sheriff's fund you brought that one up to 4.5 million, and that brought that up to 64,393, and we added that in mills. Those can be transferred or moved, they're just in those funds. If the state cuts any funds, that's where you would go to cut first.
Madam, if we do that to give us a buffer,
Yes, that was,
okay, so those funds could be moved.
Could still,
yes.
Yeah, but I want to caution that we don't get a false sense of, it's not money necessarily that we can just, extra money now that we can use. The only reason why we did that was just in case of an emergency, we have it advertised, so we're not cutting ourselves off. But there really was no intention of increasing any of that as far as actual budget and spending. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to make you think that there's extra money all of a sudden that we didn't have last month. That's not the case at all.
So you're thinking, Anton, we put those in there so that we could bucket those accounts, so that if the state comes back and says you got to cut this here and there, we've already got some.
Yeah, well, not even that. I think that just in the event that something came up in the last few weeks that we forgot, we already have it advertised.
Right.
But the bottom line, I would want to see us cut it back to the appropriate budget levels that we originally started with before we advertised. You know, if Lit Edit only had 840,000 in obligations, then the budget should only have 840 when we're done at the end of the month. It shouldn't be left at $1 million, if that makes sense. So it's just for an emergent need if we had made a mistake.
So you're thinking, get down to actual figures before we submit it to the state.
Oh, I would agree, yeah, that would be my opinion. Yeah. And that's what you would do at the end of the month. That would be the time where you'd do that.
So we do have one more meeting.
Mhm.
the 27th,
Fine tune this budget increase and.
Right.
At that time, we're gonna have the final health numbers, we're gonna have new set of the wage updates. We'll have soil and water in there, those kind of adjustments will be made, but the final action will be during the end of the month meeting. Because that's when you're actually telling the state, here it is, this is what we want. So.
Thank you, Angela.
Mhm.
So since this is a public hearing, are there any comments from the public that, questions or comments or?
One other thing I had is, Jim had pointed this out, there was a technical issue with the Correctional Facilities Fund, You know, we had decided to utilize the 20% allowance for wages, but we had left a maintenance line item of $150,000 in that budget that he said is considered operational and would be subject to that same 20% limit. So we're not able to keep that in that budget. Is that something we want to go ahead and cut?
It just stays in the correctional facility one.
Right, so if you don't budget for it, then obviously you're not obligating the money. Anything unspent would be good for the cash balance. But we can't actually have a line item with that dollar amount in it, because that would put you over the 20%. Is that correct, Jim?
So, okay, very quickly. Then, want to be real clear, in this year, for 2022, it's actually been outstanding. We're not even close to spending the 20% at all. There's actually over $1 million in that fund. But what came up is, there is the 20% rule, but the 20% rule is a hard cap as far as appropriation. So appropriation, respectively, is just the authority to use. It's not the money that's actually been spent. You can do that in any fashion, but one of the options that was presented was it's going to be about $172,000. If that money was going to be allocated and spent for the use of salaries. In the past, there's always been kind of a $150,000 appropriation line for the maintenance. When you submit your budget, you would not want to have both of those. Both of those would be considered operational expenses. Again, the question not asked, but if for some reason there was a capital expense made on the new jail, that is not an operational expense. That has nothing to do with this. But in looking at it, reviewing and kind of double checking with the agencies, regular maintenance and regular salaries are both going to be there. So you're fine at 20%, but the 322 is going to be too much to have appropriated out of your account. You've got to get that back in that range of 172, 173, whatever the 20% is.
And it really doesn't make any difference. I mean, I understand where Jim's coming from, 20% is for operational expenses. Take the other 150,000, it still stays in the correctional facility money. So no matter what maintenance we do, it's still gonna come out of correctional facility money. If there's some sort of dialogue, we have a maintenance line item out of the correctional facility money, and I believe what Jim says, it doesn't make any difference. If something has to be fixed at the jail, it's still coming out of the correctional facility money. So instead of having $150,000 in maintenance, you've got 800, you've got $1 million some dollars.
Yeah, so that's the other question I had, Jim. If they're not allowing us to use more than 20%, then I'm not sure we can go back and appropriate either. Is that still the case?
From DLGF and State Board of Accounts and other people have looked into that, what they're saying is your 20% is your hard cap. That is for however you want to use it. If you want to use 172 for maintenance, that's fine. If you want to use 172 for salary, you want to split it. But after 172, that's the hard cap for operational expenses.
Got it. So we committed the 172 and some change to match the wages. So we maxed it out there. So if there is an emergent need and we need to spend $100,000 on the jail, we're not going to be able to take it from the correctional facility fund. We're going to have to take it from another source.
I'm not saying that's not true, but I want to disagree with that. When I spoke to Jeff Peters, and I'm sure Jim's talked to him too, I'm not doubting anything he's saying, you have to have, it's 20% that we can use is solely for salaries. Only, where state statute says we pay 20% of the correctional facility money and use it to pay wages. The other 80% can be used for maintenance. We've done it before.
Okay, so there's obviously some kind of clarity that's needed on this issue. Can we make sure we have this 100% figured out and everybody on board by the time of our next meeting?
My question would be, if 172 is all you can do for operational expenses, and you have something break down, it's gonna cost you $350,000, what do? You just say, well, we can't fix it, and you're sitting on $1 million to fix it.
Yeah, I agree that that's very it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a very helpful structuring, but the law is still the law, and we gotta make sure we're compliant with that.
Absolutely.
And so if we are not able to budget for the maintenance, and we have to cut it, we have to do that, you know. So that's just something we need to make sure we have answered, and
Say the 27th is at the October.
27th is our final meeting for
I'll
adoption.
give it to Sheriff and that's all.
Yeah, but I wanted to, that was on my notes because that's a bit of a concern. It's a significant amount of money that's, will be off the table at that point, so.
Do we have anything further?
I have a question, are you guys still taking questions?
Yes.
Okay. So when you guys did the raises, it was for the hourly employees, correct? So just to kind of go a little bit off of what Nick was saying with the elected officials, if you guys have your meeting and there is to be a raise, is that coming out of the cushion that is within the general fund right now? So when the October meeting, the next October meeting comes up, is that something that's gonna be presented to the public that, okay, we've done this increase for elected officials?
That's what we'll discuss that.
If you have a comment on it, you can comment now, if you, I mean.
Well, honestly, I mean, the cushion is already starting to deteriorate, and as public servants, I would really urge to keep as much as that cushion available, as someone that's running myself, you know? Obviously, more money is great, but if it's the cushion, I would definitely personally would suggest keeping as much cushion as possible. It is an elected position, so,
We've done that before.
yeah,
That'd be the ideal goal, yes.
yeah.
Commissioner Burton, insurance, liability, workers' comp, any new information on that part of our
We're
insurance?
still looking at about the 5% that's figured into the budget. We won't have more information until after the first of the year.
Okay, because health, we're good, we know that.
We're locked in for another 2 years at the current rates.
And thank
4
you
years of
for your
savings.
work on that. At our last meeting, we had voted to basically do 110% of the 2022 appropriations for workers' comp and liability. So I think it was actually 12 and a half, because it was 10 to 15, I think was the motion. So is that too much? Do we need to dial that back?
Probably a little high.
Okay, what do you think would be, because we're gonna be working on these numbers for the next 2 weeks.
The biggest concern is the raises. It's gonna affect your workings' comp.
Okay,
And that's something, you're an insurance man.
That's true.
That's where your working with comp is going to increase substantially because of these substantial amount of raises, especially with the sheriff department. So
should we leave that one then higher?
I would leave it at this point.
Okay,
I would not mess with it because I'm afraid if you do, you're gonna be shortfall.
and then on the liability side then, should we dial that back?
I think we could probably, where were we at with that, 10%?
We did 10% increase on all line items for 23.
And the reason, you might have.
Go ahead, Dave, we both talked.
Yeah, we both talked, the reason, the cyber
That's
amount,
what it was.
that is going to go up, and they're very concerned, and that's not just Owen County, that's all of them.
Yeah.
So the 10% might be better, but what you're going to find, you're not gonna get just a universal 10%. Some are gonna remain, but it's very likely that the cyber amount is going to be much higher than the 10%, but it's not a substantial portion of it.
Yeah, the cyber, what, 6,000 a year?
And again.
It's probably not a big dollar item.
As Jim said in that chart, there's several different categories to that liability, cyber being one of them. So some of them's gonna be 10%, some of them may be 2%, some may be 4%. But if we're figuring at 10%, and I'm probably best to leave it there.
Okay,
Again, you don't wanna be at a shortfall on this, and this doesn't come up for renewal until March.
yeah, so if that's good with the council, I think, let me look at one other line item here. Because unlike health insurance, this actually is in the general fund, so makes it a little more sensitive if, even $5,000 could help us add up things, but, okay, so right now, when we left our last meeting, it was actually 12.5% is what we used to create the newest round of numbers. So maybe workers' comp, leave it at 12.5,
I would.
but considering 12.5 is a little bit on the high side of the estimate here, maybe we should dial that back a little bit.
Go to 10.
Go to 10. Okay. So I'll make a motion that we recalculate the property and liability insurance components to be 10% increase from 22's budgeted numbers instead of 12.5.
I'll second.
Motion made by Anton, seconded by Nick. Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion carried.
And we'll get those percentages to Sheila and then she can,
And on the workman's comp, you're keeping it with.
I would keep it as is, 12.5%.
And it may be a little bit low because you're talking substantial raises, but we've got to start somewhere.
Who seconded that motion?
Nick.
In community corrections, there's part-time in one of their funds, and it's one of those things where they have a set amount, it's 20,000 is their limit. And she never goes above that in that particular fund, but what changes is the hours, the estimated hours that the employees work, because she'll adjust that to hit the 20,000, if that makes sense. Now she has another 6,500 that she has budgeted towards that same part-time group of people. So the aggregate total is 26,500. I had talked with her about the hours estimate needed to get it close to 26,500. And it was gonna be, a pool of about 1,689 hours. So if it's good with the council, those are kind of the numbers that she and I have been talking about. Is that something you're comfortable with, or do you want to see something more on that?
Is that the way she's been doing yearly?
It used to be 20 for a while, but if you remember partway through this year, I believe, she had asked for an additional appropriation from one of the other grant funds to increase the capacity for that. And assuming that's continuing, the limit is 26,500. And
She has transfers in your regular
Yeah.
meeting tonight, and what she's trying to do is absolutely utilize every penny. So she's moving from line item to line item to get the most hours that she can without going over.
Then I don't know if we need any board action.
you don't, not necessarily, I just want to make sure you understand that that's the configuration she's working with and the numbers we're going to be plugging in for wages, so.
Thank you.
Is there anything else before we close the public hearing?
What about unexpended line items? I looked at that report that Jim sent.
I thought maybe that would be something we would address in the next.
Well, from a budget standpoint, some of these were in there as well. And they're really, most of them were not really significant. Right, Jim? There was, 150, 200, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But the thing that stood out to me for the balance of 22 was in IT budget for phone, there was a $4,000 unspent line item. So the question is do we need it? Is that something, what would that normally?
I'm not really sure how HICOM's billing us out and how those claims are being done, because I know they've moved phone lines, they've had a fax line,
They've done stuff.
They haven't done stuff. So those invoices end up at the auditor's office, and I'm not exactly sure, but they should be some of those bills to HICOM.
So activity has occurred, so then the question is where's it been spent from if it's been billed? Because that's
I
a,
got a feeling it's probably been spent in contract services through IT. It's how it probably been billed out.
okay.
And have to go back and do some research on that. I do know that HICOM has dealt with some of these situations. I personally have not seen those bills.
So maybe the auditor can look into that a little bit, because if it's not actually needed, then obviously we want to make the cut. But if something's needed, we don't want to put it at zero.
Exactly.
So,
We're still gonna have phone issues.
I was gonna say, you're gonna have phone issues and with the upgrades to all the computers, that $4,000 could go a long way, so I would hate to see that
Exactly.
cut.
it could be transferred if it ends up not
It
being
could be.
used, okay.
Yep.
Cume cap under contracts, there was a $60,000 appropriation and 0 of that has been spent, and I find that hard to believe because we use that, or we have plenty to do.
Split in Q cap, and that's why this year we put it into building maintenance as one amount. Easier to manage that way. And particularly with the health building coming up, we've already approved a $50,000 roof. We're soon to have a $100,000 or $150,000 repair on that wall. So that's why it was all combined into one.
So for 23, and I do see where it's all in maintenance,
Exactly.
200,000 in
Covers
maintenance.
everything.
So maybe it's just a matter again of how claims have been processed and what line item they've been taken from. But if at the end of the day, you're needing 200,000 for maintenance,
That's for every building.
Okay.
Yep.
okay? And then in 4D, there is a service agreement of 2,100, and I know he's not here, but it's possible there might be something at the end of the year that's paid from that, but it was the 4D service agreement line item that was for 2,100 that didn't have any money spent in that, so.
What about the coroner with the copy machine?
Yeah, and the copy machine, I thought remember last year we had a snafu trying to figure,
I think they just got their copy machines and all that hooked up with fourth phase, just
Okay.
got it, so.
They just got IT or Wi-Fi and stuff set up over there.
Okay.
Last 3 or 4 months.
However, all of the other coroner line items that are there, she is in your regular meeting. $500 for body bags, she has enough in these line items as DLGF suggested to do transfers, not additional appropriations. You'll have to do the 32,000 for autopsies, but that 500, you could ask for transfers.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
that's all I had.
Nick?
No, thank you.
Any?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Motion made to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Seconded by Nick. All those in favor? Motion carried. Public meeting is now closed.
So do we then need to take a vote to then formally do something then with that, or are we good enough just to conduct the hearing and close it?
You made motions to reduce and look at, so those changes will have to be done and presented at your October 27th meeting to review, and then you would make a motion to accept the changes. And again, as long as it doesn't go over the 18,452,425, you're okay.
So closing the meeting is good enough.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn. Second?
We don't need a second, so.
Don't need a second. All right, our public hearing meeting has adjourned. Okay, now on to our regular meeting. I want to call our regular council meeting for October the 11th. I'm going to call that to order. Do you want to say the prayer for this one?
Bow your heads and heart with me, we'll go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you tonight for your grace, your mercy, and your ever-loving kindness for each and every one of us. Father, just let us say and do the things that bring glory and honor to you tonight, and not ourselves. And just have your way in our lives. Forgive us where we fall short. Bless this nation and all the dismay it's in. We'll give you the thanks, the praise, and the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amy, I'm still. I get a pen.
Nikki, I've got plenty of things. Back here.
I'll give it back to you.
While we enjoy a good discussion, I just want to remind the public that this, as long as everything is done with respect and is not disruptive to the meeting, then you will be allowed to speak. I would appreciate if whoever desires to speak to raise your hand so we can keep this in order and we can move along, and we're not here till 11 o'clock. So with that being said, Joel has asked to speak.
Forgive me for not standing, counsel. I wanted to discuss with you my participation in the last council meeting. It was misunderstood, and I want to make amends to that misunderstanding. I was referred to as defiant, evasive, if you will. And the truth of the matter, I was. Due in part because I had no more knowledge of what was going on by the time that meeting was conducted than most of you did. Had I spoken, I would have been spewing things that made no sense to nobody. Okay? Mr. Wood asked a question of me, I was evasive. Because I had nothing to give you. I had nothing to offer that would make any sense at that particular time. So, having said that, I owe an apology for that, being evasive in that manner. I should have just said I don't have any knowledge, and I didn't. And still, details are being worked out concerning this situation. So for that, I apologize and say, I should have been more forthcoming in answering questions.
Joel, are we talking about the question as far as the resignation question?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, Andy. And again, had I spoken, it may have made no sense, and I may have been ill-speaking in the situation. And at that particular time, there wasn't enough information going on that anything I could have said would have made any sense to anybody.
Yes, certainly. Being the one that engaged with you, I certainly accept. The concern here, though, is that supposedly went down on a Friday.
That's correct.
Okay. The text was sent out to each commissioner and folks that work for the highway department. And that text said that he was going to resign and that he'd been asked to stay on.
You are correct.
And so, when the question was asked, that's why I was confused, because, that, I know conversations took place between the sheriff and key players the next day. Bob called us after the meeting, so that's where it wasn't adding up.
Sure, and I agree. Superintendent Milton had indeed resigned, that's no secret. But he had also rescinded his resignment prior to that meeting. So, yes, I was being evasive in that because I didn't know how to answer that appropriately and with any worthiness, that would give me any knowledge it was any good.
Well, I'm not going, here's the thing, it takes a man to come forward and say that, I've had to do it many times. Whenever I asked the question, I said, was there a resignation? Of course, the answer was no. And I asked Mr. Burton again, I said, was there anything like a reservation, or a resignation? It's on video.
Sure.
Absolutely not, was the response.
This is me talking to council, let's not talk about other commissioners, okay? Because this is me talking to you.
No, I'm talking about the whole situation.
Right, okay. Well, again, there needs to be an understanding that, I had no longer raised my hand and took the oath that this situation arose, okay? Now, keep in mind, I didn't even know this job position was open. I didn't know this job position had been built. I didn't know this job position had been posted. I didn't know any of that because I hadn't been involved long enough to know this. So this came as a great surprise to me. I did talk to Greg Melton, and I told him that I didn't, want to accept his resignation. I shared that with him. And it was only after speaking with another commissioner, which again, I'm not going to, this came to light to me as to what this situation was. Having said all that, I was evasive. Again, I don't believe that I had any information that would have any value to anybody that they didn't already know. And so, and for that, I can say that I extend my apologies for any of that miscommunication, if you will. And I extend that to the council as a whole. I do deal with this situation daily. I've heard from the people in my district, I've heard from the people in the county. It comes as no surprise that I've shared the fact, fellow commissioners, that I don't stand with this, okay? I took the oath to listen to my people, our people, and listen to my district, and they're speaking loud and proud. I would be doing an injustice if I didn't do what I just did here and take care of the people that I stuck my hand up and took oath to take care of. And that's all the time I really want to take with you folks. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. And one last thing, I do support, I want to say it, I'm going to say it openly, I support Greg Melton to the fullest. I think he's a great superintendent, and I think he, I want it publicly known that I support him wholeheartedly. And that's where I stand on it. And thank you guys for your time.
I appreciate you coming, Joel, and listen to your constituents, because I think that's very important. I mean, that's why we're all up here. We've got to listen to, and it was kind of put out there that we were acting on social media, but we've all gotten phone calls over this. And
as I've said before, I don't participate in social media. I haven't for a very long time. But, I'm not beating up on anybody personally, not through any of this, not fellow commissioners, not fellow councilmen. I'm not, this is not a personal attack on anybody. However, this has to be said, because, again, I have to listen to what people are wanting or thinking, and you have to take that into consideration. It's still a lot of up in the air, if you will. I think we could all agree that there's still just a lot aloft right now, and we're trying to figure out where to go with this. But, you know, my support for the county and the people of it stays strong. I still, intend on working with everybody I can to get this ball rolling and move on. And really, you know, that's it. You know, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it with you folks.
I think what you said, you know, about there's still a lot of unknown out there, and that's, we were gonna have our executive meeting, and that was planned, and by some unknown reason, the newspaper did not get that published, so we were unable to have that. And so we're still at the same point because we've not been able to discuss that.
I don't understand what's unknown, and everybody had, the chance to call and talk to the superintendent.
It's a fair
Throw it
comment.
out there.
I have to be careful, but I'm gonna speak now, because I can't speak to an employee who was hired or who was not. But I think that when we talk about unknowns, everybody involved needs to be clear that prior to budget, Commissioner Curry, Councilwoman Chester, Councilman Robinson, and I, along with Rachel Whitinger, my administrative assistant, vetted this position. You know, and I'm gonna say this from the highway department standpoint in regard to the position. Not who, but the position. If it was emergency services, Chris, if it was Kathleen, if it was Sam, and sorry everyone, the question wouldn't be here because we vetted this position. I don't believe it is the position. And again, I must be careful, I think it is the who.
I don't know that it's the who. I think we are kind of concerned also with the funding for the rest of this year. I've been told that, and we've gotten reports that not only normally that it's down, your revenue is down in August usually, right?
That is correct.
And in September, it came under what you're used to getting, is that right?
That is correct.
So I think that's a concerning trend, and this is, I'm talking about this personally. I've got, you know, I still fully support that position, and you and I have talked about that, and it's not the who. I want to make sure that that trend is not, I mean, you're in trouble bringing people for laborers. I mean, you've come up and you've talked about how you've got just enough crew to either mow or to, but,
Oh, I lost 2 more this week.
so I mean, that's concerning because that picture, the whole financial picture, bless her. The whole financial picture, I mean, is, okay.
Well, we are down, and Jim, you'll have to, I'm going to lean to you, everything is in the black, correct?
Correct.
And, projections to the end of the year, 1, 2, something like that. What's our projections to the end of the year, or what we have right now?
You want me to address the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well.
I mean, I'm sorry.
No, I just.
The only thing that I want everyone to be clear is the position was vetted, and I don't think that folks understand that, we talked about this ahead of time and everybody was aware, so I want, everybody just to be, aware and know that, you know, this is, something that the commission and the council was aware of ahead of time. as long as that,
And I think I'm sorry,
uh,
I didn't mean to interrupt, Greg.
no, no.
But when
you're
we
fine.
had our meeting there at the highway department, and I do support that position, we had talked about 2023, right?
And
Is that correct?
that is correct.
Right. So I think the only thing that we had kind of, that's different, because nobody's taken that position away, is whether it would start now or at the beginning of 2023. You guys want to chime in?
You know, I will say, Greg, in different levels, and I will say that none of them revolve around one central theme, but there's clearly been a lot of feedback, you know, and a lot of it asked. You know, I think clearly no one's insulting you by saying you don't know what's best for the department, but I think, you know, anytime that folks that are out there doing the direct role are moved to a support role, people seem to think, you know, well, they're taking, you know, this off this and putting them into a job that they don't think, you know, directly affects the road surfaces or whatever. So, there has been a lot of feedback on different levels, and that's certainly, you know, I will tell you, I'm weighing it into balance.
So basically then the feedback has been, Greg doesn't need that position, we need to spend that money on the roads. But we, you know, you're gonna have to draw the line somewhere, feedback's okay. I want everybody to understand that everything was done legally. And a lot of people said, well, morally, ethically, there's a big difference between morals and ethics. Ethics is the legal standpoint, I feel. Morals are your personal beliefs. And I just, you know, if everything was done legally, which I believe that it was, we can't really just let morals, because not everybody's morals are the same. So that's all I have to say.
And I think that, you know, you can take inventory of each person and what you think their morals or ethics are, but the bottom line is, at the last meeting, a vote was taken by each duly elected member of this council, and there was a result. There's a ton of times that I've sat up here and said, how can a person vote that way? That's absolutely, Nick, that's absolutely, I'm kidding. But no, seriously, but everybody's doing what they're elected to do.
I think that's what it boils down to. There wasn't a formal motion made and seconded and it passed to, and I'm looking at the minutes right now, to advertise the executive meeting and for us to discuss it in that meeting, and that was not able to be done.
Owen, can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. I think what's done is everybody ought to sit back and look. Doesn't matter who or what. Greg done the right thing. I think council's done the right thing. I think the commission's done the right thing. We've got 90 days that this is going to go into the 2023 budget, so this person will be hired anyway. What we're losing is 90 days, and what she was hired for, what we said, was for the grants to get the roads updated from CVS, so we get more money for the roads. My biggest calls I get is people complaining about the roads. They don't care about none of this. I've not got one call about this information right here. Absolutely none. But I get calls every day about the roads. They don't care who's sheriff, they don't care who's commissioner, they don't care who's on the council. Only thing they want, new blacktop for their yard. Honestly, they all want, and they all think the tax money goes to the roads.
I know, that's.
And they don't care, piss and dime, where we get any salary or not, they want new roads. And
we're just, if we slow this down for 90 days, it's gonna take away from Gray what he needs to be done to get his money up so he can blacktop the roads. Let's do the right thing. Stick with what we got.
Council, did you want these numbers or not? I can just give you.
Well, I do want to respond to that, and Jim, I'm sorry, I don't want to continue the banter, but I want to make sure that everybody is clear, in regard. We are asking for this position to do, research to help handle the bridge because of, the workload that has been, put into our office and to get our inventory up to par. The grants are handled by myself and Ms. Whitinger, and as long as I'm at the highway department, I intend to keep that, working the same way that, I have it working now.
Yeah, just for a point of clarification here, for those of us who've been to these meetings and listened and heard different stories throughout. I clearly sat 2 seats away from everybody who last time around said one thing while they were out here in the audience, and are now saying something different today. I'm not going to belabor that point. But I also have heard that in the course of this, sitting here paying attention and listening as the public does, okay, that the position that we're talking about here in large part was in fact for grants, okay, to help ensure that as opposed to getting $111,000 or $115,000 in community crossing grant money, whereas Putnam County and Clay County got $1 million, and the town of Clay City got $250,000. This position was going to help with that. However, I've sat in commissioners' meetings where I've heard first that the issue with that grant was a mapping department issue. Okay, until last meeting when I heard it was something to do with high schoolers and crayons. Okay, now assuming that the last explanation on face just doesn't hold up, okay, and that this is actually a mapping issue, can somebody explain to me how a highway department ad is the appropriate ad? And why is this a permanent position when this, by all accounts, would sound a lot like a temporary project? If I can get an understanding of that, I can start to get on board with some of what I'm hearing when I can decide which version of it is actually the truth.
I want to know too, Brett.
Well,
I would like to know that too.
I think, Brett, there's an easy explanation of that. We talk about the Crayola girls, we talk about the GPS, we talk about the inventory, we're talking about one thing. It's really all the same thing.
So was it mapping when in the early part of the year, we were told it was a mapping department issue, and that's the reason we would get the money in July. The auditor's not here, but have we received additional monies in July or not?
I guess I'm clear what you're talking about. Money's in July.
Well,
I'm not
community crossing grants came out.
No, we did not.
We have not yet.
I have explained that in many meetings.
Yeah. So
I have
reapplied.
I have reapplied for community crossing. I have
That's my
reapplied for community crossing, and they're not gonna let that until November. So, what we've done is the roads that the commissioners gave me that they wanted on community crossing, we went in, Ms. Whitinger and I, and made a correction in order for those roads to be correct and get those submitted on community crossing, so we could attempt to get the full $1 million.
Okay, so was that a mapping problem or not? If you fixed it, how was it a mapping problem back when it was first explained? I sat in the room.
Inventory mapping in my book is all the same thing. You can come out and look at it. We can sit in this meeting and hash out over mapping inventory and the Crayola girls And you're more than welcome to come out to my office and I can show you the GPS, the mapping, and the inventory, because I did not lie to you.
Well, I'm not saying you did. I'm saying that I'm not going to your office. I'm sitting in here in the meetings and I'm listening to what's being offered as an explanation.
Well,
and the explanation moves every time the topic comes up, and I'm not pointing fingers at you.
Yeah, no one's pointing fingers, but to be fair, one of the questions, Amy, that has come up to me, and it's come up from two different people, is, okay, so you've got this threshold of where we thought it was 632 miles was the county mileage that we needed to tend to, now it's 850. And back to Brett's point, you know, so.
I've always said, I hate to interrupt, but I've been in many, many meetings and I've never said there's 632 miles. I've always reported that there's more than that. We've run.
All right, so listen, I'm not arguing that.
No, I'm not arguing. I just want to make the point that I've said that. Anton and I have spoken about that on numerous occasions.
And it goes on to say, you issues of only 632 miles and feels it's closer to 850 miles. So with that, you know, the question's been brought up. So a full-time, you know, yearly position, and you're talking about, you know, 200 more miles, give or take a few, and you know, basically the question of justifiability for a full-time position for that amount of mileage. So I want everybody to know that it's not just about one central issue. There are several things, and it takes weighing all those several things to come up with something. So, and I think that went to kind of where you were going as well, but basis, project-based versus, you know, full-time.
And when we had that meeting at the highway department, I remember you talking about that would be the main goal for that position, was to, you know, document these extra 200 miles so we would get paid for what we're actually maintaining. And I do remember Nick saying that why not do a temporary position, because if that's the main goal of that position, you know, it doesn't look like something that would be a permanent position. I do remember that conversation. Do you, Nick?
I think we've walked all over this thing.
Yeah, we have.
I think the question probably ought to be clarified tonight in regards to our minutes. Is this line item still on hold, as it was put on hold at the last council meeting?
Well, my position, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I want everybody
If
to.
there's a motion out there to change that position, then I think everybody's free to make it. You know, but that's.
And that's what it would take. Because I think there was a motion passed, seconded, and carried that stopped
Until we had our executive
until there was clarification.
Yeah, it specifically said, and I can read, if you've got your minutes here, and we have not
No, I
approved
wrote
them.
it up, yeah.
But it specifically said we were putting that on hold until our executive session, which did not happen because of not getting, the paper not getting advertised, so.
Greg, question, do you have a draft job description that you can send to me? For some reason, I cannot find that. That'd be good to look over to evaluate that.
Well, we drafted one, I thought that Rachel sent it to you.
Yeah, if she did, I cannot seem to locate that, but I'd like to take a look at that, please.
So with that, over the last few minutes, you set the agenda. If I'm jumping ahead, let me know, but I've looked over the minutes, and I'd like to move that we approve those. Both sets of minutes dated 12th and 26th September 2022.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Nick. Motion made by Andy. Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Jim, you wanna do your financial review?
This was a financial review for the October fund ledger, starting today and into September. So a lot of good news in September. September, actually, our total amount of receipts were $3,088,000. The monthly expenditures were $3,063,000. So actually, there was a $25,000 increase in total receipts in September. County's been very, very consistent as far as total funds. We started the year at roughly 10 million, went to 10 million until the time of basically settlement, and the ARP money came in. So as of 9/30, the county's total funds accumulation was still over $14 million. So both of those have been very consistent. All of your major operating funds at the end of September 30th had a positive balance. That includes all the highway funds, the local road and street, MVH, and MVH restricted. The general fund ended a total balance on 9/30 of $1,254,015.65. Council, that is the 9th consecutive month for your general fund. Now, it seems odd that we're already into mid-October. We're about 4 weeks until the property tax is due. Again, I'm not sure exactly on the settlement. I mean, if that's been squared away today, but possibly by the end of November or early December, looking at the settlement already coming in. There's absolutely no reason to think that the general fund will not end in a positive balance in the year. There's absolutely none. You'll have those to come in with. Some of the grant funds are very consistent, the same proportional, but there's no new funds coming in that are in the red. So that part looks good. The transfers and appropriations, just kind of reminder to all department heads at the council, and Madam Auditor had the lead. The clock is running on any group that needs appropriations or transfers. Got to get those in. Then you will run out of the clock. There are, council, you should have a report as far as transfers and appropriations, roughly about 12 items at least stuck out. Some of those were technical, as far as like the one loan, it's $4 off. Mental health in the commissioner's budget, that was raised up to roughly around 99. So there's some technical appropriations that need to be done, but there's others as far as motives. So example, utilities, the appropriation utilities is $320,000. The amount that's been spent so far is $244,000. If that would progress, or if the winter would get kind of harsh, look at about a $5,000 miss. So I just wanted to kind of bring those out to attention to kind of look at those. It might be something you want to look at in October, but our time clock is really running and getting those. Your other ones is expenditures and appropriations. You already talked about that in your previous budget. Those are not every single one, but anything under $100 I didn't include in the report, and there were a couple funds that were rarely used. I did say that would be of any benefit. But right now, there's close to $800,000 the appropriations, but unexpended going into 2023. That's in general. It looks good. The amount of receipts have not come in yet in October. The amount for what the highway budget for 76, 73 hasn't came in. August is always anecdotally, it's low, 125, but there's nothing to suggest in your highway budget that they're not going to have a positive balance. I think you're looking at a minimum revenue of at least $750,000. I think that's very safe as far as just 73, 76 to carry out the year. The only thing I would say of concern is looks like the gas and oil had reached its 252. You've already made that adjustment in the riverboat, so it's not an issue, but expect riverboat to decrease in October, November, because you're going to have more people reaching in. But no, there's nothing to suggest that highway will have a negative balance in any way at the end of the year. It would be the opposite.
So fuel, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's one of my items to ask about was the riverboat. And so we have been now tapping into that currently.
Right.
And we had kind of estimated an amount for that appropriation for the balance of the year. Do we have any beginnings of a trend there? Are we on target? Are we?
No, unfortunately, and it's just the trend's going to come to you in October because basically, it was kind of the sheriffs for the most part. 1151 still had money, highway still had money.
Okay.
So what you're gonna see, the real effect will be in October, because there's gonna be a much greater draw out of Riverboat.
Okay. So wait for October data.
I think.
So at our November meeting, we'll.
November meeting, I think we'll definitely would know whether we're gonna make it or not through. I think that we will, but no, it's just too premature.
And as far as year-end stuff, we had in extension, we had a follow-up item concerning regular wages. I don't know if you remember that. We had an employee changeover, and they were going to try to take care of that difference within budget, but maybe I'll reach out to Jennifer and see if she can get with us on an update. If you remember, this was an earlier in the year thing. We don't want to lose sight of that, because if there is some kind of a difference, we're going to have to do an appropriation or consider what to do with that.
That's gonna come up by November.
Yeah, that's something we have to get in.
That's reaching.
Okay.
The other one, just kind of attention wise, is that care of inmates, that, if I recall correctly, that's juvenile detention. Now, that's a judge's call. So what I'm trying to say is, there's nothing about the amount. The judge has to make a decision on juveniles are detained or not detained in those situations. But there's only $10,000 appropriated in there, and so far the cost already this year is $65,000. So definitely need a transfer appropriation in some way, but probably, like looking ahead, 10,000, it's not covering. Those are very expensive. I'm on the detention, that has to be paid. I do not believe Owen County has a juvenile detention fee, so those have to be, in essence, transferred out, and then the bill is then sent to the county.
So at our last two meetings, we actually had brought this up, and we decided to just simply postpone it.
Sure.
But we can't do that past November.
Right, I think you're reaching your timeline of wrapping this up, so I think that you do have, this is kind of a list, it's a small list, but I think, and especially for the department heads, I did not record every single one, but I would request if the department heads would take a good hard look at their line item budget, any transfers or appropriations they might need.
Any other questions for Jim?
No, it is financial related, but Commissioner Burton, the community crossings grant, we were just kind of touched on this earlier, and I had this in my notes. So we still don't know yet if we're going to get anything from the second call for projects.
Either end of the year or first of the year.
Got it. Okay, so more than likely, the grant match for that would be spent in '23.
Correct.
So the question is for '22, we earmarked the money for the match.
Right.
And I think one of the things we need to be mindful of is it's one thing normally not to have something spent and it rolls into the fund, and that's nice. But since the unique point of having that grant match in there is to go towards roads, is there any thought about utilizing that 300-some thousand this year for some road projects?
Very well.
You see where I'm going with that?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we're not going to get that grant this year, so you're right, the money is there, $333,000, I believe.
Yes.
Very much would go towards roads. The problem that we've got is our paving mile is up to about $190,000 per mile.
Right.
So it doesn't go very far. But we have many bridges on the project list that cover possibly 2 bridges, one for sure. We have got way behind on our 2 bridges per year, as originally was set up several years ago. So it's definitely something to look at. I would not take that money and spend it somewhere else, because it is economic development, and that's what that money is basically set aside for.
Yeah, and I know normally, when it was in the highway budget, if it was something we wound up not needing as the match, then you go ahead and use it.
Right. Here's
for road
another thing
projects.
as well. Next year, we could get the spring letting and the fall letting. That would require 2 matching grants, and that's very possible. So you might want to hold off until spring before we look at that situation.
Got it. The bottom line is, it's definitely for roads or bridges. And I don't want, folks to forget that that's what that's for.
Exactly.
You know, if it's not spent for the grant, then it still can be spent for roads. And so if it doesn't happen in 22, which it sounds it's not gonna happen, obviously the cash balance and edit, it's there.
Right.
But when we think about things like appropriations and other obligations in edit, I think we need to make sure we earmark that amount, not only for 23, which we budgeted for, but we need to earmark another 333,000 that wasn't spent in 22 and that cash balance for roads, if you're following me there. So unless there's an objection to that, I want to make sure that's in the record, so we don't forget it. Because
And then where did this 300-some thousand come from?
it's out of the edit fund. That's where,
Not only are-
no, it doesn't involve ARPA, but it's normal edit funds operational. Because it's likely we're not going to be spending any of it this year anyway. So,
We wouldn't be able to get bids out, but I honestly believe NDOT's moved the date back twice now on fall letting, but I do believe that the first week in November is still on target.
and didn't we get a small amount of, in the first round and so there's a little bit of a match?
We sent it back.
Okay.
The road that they were going to give us a mile, and they give us $100,000, 110, something like that, and the project was like 162,000, and we didn't have the money in the budget to kick in the 62. So we returned it to the state, as well as many other counties around the state of Indiana.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay.
Got a question?
I am.
I just want to make a statement. We got to set up our settlement for November 16th.
November 16th?
That's probably one of the very first ones, isn't it?
Okay, next on the agenda, let's see. Let's see, the 2023, budget review, we've already done that. Next is the ARPA fund plan review and commissioner request.
Real quick, for the budget review, do we want to address EMS in this category since we were talking about the loan payment and the amount in his budget and what we might want to do with that kind of thing? Because that might make a decision on what we do at our next meeting. Is that a good place for that?
I'm trying to think. What's everybody's mind on that?
We're addressing EMS, is that what you're saying?
And what the loan payoff is?
Yeah, well, in the new business, there isn't any EMS listed, but under 23 budget review, since any kind of a decision involving the loan would affect the line item that's in his budget for 23, you know, do we want to go ahead and have that discussion?
I have no problem if you want to address it. I mean, very.
Chris has got it all memorized, right? It's not really that complicated, right? But, you know, we talked at our last meeting to have Jim review the finances around that. He had a memo he put together for us. Chris has been monitoring the balance of that very closely. And of course, we know that in the 23 budget, we budgeted, you know, almost 60,000 towards a loan payment, which if you decide to pay off the loan would not be needed in his budget. So maybe Jim can give us an overview and maybe Chris can provide some comments on it.
I'll give you the stats on it. Council, you asked me to take a look at it. There was a loan done, it was from People's State Bank. The loan amount was for $750,000. Now, the actual payments was set up twice for May and November. The loan itself is for 20 years. The first payment was made on May 8th of 2019. The interest rate is 3.875. That's a fixed rate for the term of the loan. The payoff on October 11th of 2022, that amount is $637,782.20. All the payments have been made on time. There were 2 made in 2019, there were 2 made in 2020, and then in 2021, was just simply the entire loan was paid off at the first setting. So it was actually early payments of approximately $55,000 on March 17th of 2021 and March 20th of 2022. So the loan is in good shape, it is in good order. The question would be for the council about paying it off. So as the carry forward budget, when Chris started his carry forward cash balance in 2021, there was $688,000 that carried over from the previous year. In 2022, in its May settlement, he received $1.2 million. His billing to August 31st was $659,000. So in 11/51, the total actual revenue that the received was almost $2 million in the EMS fund. That's how much it went in there. The projected billing that Chris probably will receive for the remainder of the year is about $306,000 combined revenue. So he's going to have a substantial cash balance that came in. When I get to the point on that, kind of get now to the what's called the more proverbial bottom line. The total amount of combined revenue, the 1151, carry over, the amount coming in, the billing was going to be roughly around 3.7 million. The appropriated budget this year was roughly about 2 million, which leave the unused funds of about 1.6. This is from memory, I could be off, but I do believe as of today, Chris has, at 1151, has about $1.5 million is right there. So this is right on target. So the question would be, if he continues out, how do you want to use it? If you did a payoff of the loan at $673,782 as of basically today, now that could change, a little bit, but that's the ballpark. There was also discussion, you're talking about the loan, but there was also discussion of whether or not to take any of that fund that's permitted by law into the rainy day. 15% of its appropriated budget in 2022 would be right at about $281,000. This is not suggesting do it, not. I'm just saying that these were two of the options that the council had talked about paying off. The total amount, if there was a total payoff of $637,782 and a transfer to rainy day of $281, would be right at $919,000. That's the total that would come out of the account. So that would leave a balance of roughly about $700,000 in an account. A lot of the question is what you're comfortable with. Now, you have not approved the budget in 2023, but it looks ahead, if I remember right, on the certified rates. Last year in 2022, it was about 2.2. It's four numbers, but 0.22 all the way through. That was higher than normal, and that led to this amount coming in. The proposed rate, and it has not been certified, this isn't, but one of the projected rates is now, instead of 0.22 across, it was about a 0.05. Quite a cut. So the question really before the council is, if 1151 has an operating budget in that range of about 2.222 for next year, what level of comfort level does the council have of the lower amount of settlement that is going to come in? That clearly will be going from 0.22 to 0.05. That's going to be lower. He has a very good billing, very consistent billing that's going to come in, but you're now engaged in kind of a match game. Revenue, less settlement, carryover, and what is your comfort level? Now, the term, sometimes it's opportunity cost. The only thing that also might factor in, and we don't, not about a discussion, the jail project on my main, but at some point, Owen County may be considering a capital project. That project, just in the ballpark range of $20 million. Interest rates, at least as of today, are higher than the 3.85. So there's also a weighing of your opportunity cost. Do you want to pay off a substantial amount of cash out of your total budget to pay off the loan, if there's a possibility there's going to be a higher? So it's a lot of things really to look at, but I guess probably the most immediate would be, can't talk without a cliche, but once spent, always spent. Once you've spent that $657,000, out of that account, I mean, that's spent, your loan is exhausted, but you're still then working with your director on his balance of roughly about 2.2, kind of what your comfort level is on that. So that's kind of a basic outline of what's there. It's about $55,000 a year. It's 3.85, and there's about 600,000 plus that remain. Take it out, it's spent, loan's exhausted, but the residual would then be, he's going to have less coming in and settlement next year. It certainly appears that way if the same projected budget, revenue, and just what amount you feel very comfortable with. Weighing your opportunity cost. If the loan's going to be at 4, 5, or 6%, that's really unknown. Is it better to keep it at 3.85? Again, only little opinion that I would put in there. This is not something that absolutely would have to be done tonight if you want to, consider. But I mean, it can be paid off at any time that you want. But that would give you kind of your parameters of what this loan would be.
Jim, this would also give us a better credit rating, would it?
Well, sure, but if it could, I mean, with limitation is what I mean. We still have, and I'm going to give you, the best accurate I can. We still have 2 historical funds that have to be dealt with, okay, in the red. So as of today, I'm just going to round. There's still about $1 million in the red. That has got to be resolved, okay? The viability of income and the loan. So the answer to your question is, sure, every loan that you can do, but this may not help us get that B+ or A- bond rating itself. It doesn't hurt, but I don't see this as the paramount factor that's going to get us to that A-. This is just something for the council to consider.
Madam Chair, I know it might not be that we address it tonight, but I'd like to ask Chris a question. I thought you gave us a list of pros and cons, Chris, and it looked like the pros was a much more enticing appetite than the cons. Are you still in favor of that?
Yeah, the only thing that's changed since that letter went out is our new rate is.
Yeah.
And that new rate went from 0.22, which we know was too high, I've said that many times, to a 0.05. I just don't know what that income is going to work out to be. I think we would be fine doing paying off the loan, but if we were to consider paying off the loan and moving 15%, that's going to be too tight. Just because I don't know what this 0.05 rate is going to do to it. And we probably won't know until it strikes up.
So there's too many uncertainties right now, or a number of uncertainties, but you seem to be concerned.
Well, like I said, I don't know what the 0.05 is going to do, and I don't know what the consensus of the council is about moving funds into rainy day. So,
I didn't mean to put you in a trick. I appreciate your strategy.
I don't think we're there yet. Let's move on, because that's something I think needs to be discussed a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we do need to be careful with it. I know, Chris, you mentioned that you kind of had a target of about 800,000. You wanted to make sure was in your cash balance at what would be the worst time of the year, which would be May or October balances probably. And not knowing the rate layout and exactly what that revenue is gonna entail, I would agree that the rainy day portion would probably need to be on hold for this year. But I do think we should proceed with the loan. And I'm gonna make a motion that we pay off the balance of that loan, and proceed in closing that out and consequently reducing the budget by the loan payment amount for '23.
So we're not dealing with the.
No rainy day.
So there's a motion on the floor.
I'll second that. For discussion. And we go.
Well, you know, from my point of view, I've heard a lot in meetings for and against this move. I really don't have an issue with it either way, but, you know, I am kind of curious as, you know, I'd really like to see an analysis, you know, put up in front of us that says, this is the consequence of doing this, or this is the benefit of doing this, for good or for bad. And Jim, I think we even talked about that in the past. Now, clearly, no one's put you, you know, or requested that you do that lately. I'm just saying, I don't know that I'm there yet to vote. I think we've got good options both ways, but I'm not gonna vote for it.
I'm not, I mean, Chris and I've talked about this, and we've talked about the benefits of paying off this loan, but I don't want to do this when he's not comfortable with it. And I think with the unknowns, I mean, that's kind of created a little bit more of a discomfort. So I would like to see, I mean, I would like to revisit this because anytime, I mean, as a business person, anytime you can pay off a loan, it does wonders for your credit rating, and it also, you know, helps save the taxpayers money. But I also, in essence, don't want to put Chris's budget and cash balance in jeopardy either, so.
So the analysis is in front of you. This is what Jim put together. And it explains every step in the process all the way into '23. Paying the loan off will not even come close to threatening his '23 budget or his cash balance if you look through that report. And if you also remember, because of the rate disparity for '22, all budgets aside, his revenue was $1 million plus more than it should have ever been. You know, he would have never gotten it to begin with. The balance of this loan is $670,000 or so. So he had $1 million. This is just simplistic description. He had $1 million that he got that he would have never gotten anyway. We're only taking 670, paying off a debt that will save taxpayers $200,000 over the life of the loan. It'll reduce his budget by 50-some thousand for next year that we don't have to fund. This is kind of a no-brainer, and we've discussed it for several months. I think it's time to take some action on this. And again, it's not going to threaten his cash balance. It's not going to hurt his budget for '23. That's all outlined by Jim's report. I think it's something we need to do. I think it's the right thing to do financially for the county.
I think I would be totally on board if we took the 15% and off the table.
Oh, I agree. I'm not comfortable with the rainy day.
I don't want to do, pay off his loan and put the 15%.
They are two independent things, but I'm not particularly in favor of the rainy day because of the uncertainty of the certified rates that we talked about. But the loan is a no-brainer, to be honest.
So if we were to take that off the table, then I would be on board with that.
Well, the motion is to pay the loan. There's no obligation to do anything with rainy day or touch that at all. This stands alone as just a simple loan payment using the cash balance from the fund.
Any other discussion?
You know,
And what is the interest rate too?
3.7, 3.87
Is it changing?
fixed.
again, you know, you use the term no-brainer, but there are some opinions being shared here by Jim and others about, you know, whether it's appropriate or timely and what kind of impacts it'll have down the road. So, like I said, I think it's a benefit. I'm not gonna vote that way, but I certainly respect why you guys are doing it. So, I'm just not there yet.
And again, he got $1 million more than he would have ever seen.
I understand that.
This is $670,000. There's still quite an excess that he's still keeping in his cash balance that we're not touching.
I totally understand that.
And then you figure in the amount of money in interest that is saved over the life of the loan. That's only to his advantage, because that's no longer being spent by the county taxpayer.
And Tom, I think your motion's gonna pass.
Well, I hope, I'm pushing for
really
it,
do,
I think
because
it's a
you are
good
trying very
financial
hard,
decision,
so.
but,
Right.
and I do respect, you know, the cautiousness, but I think you'll see from the details that we are still being extremely conservative, even with taking this action. And I think that's a good win-win situation for folks, so that's why I support that.
Chris, if, I mean, and I know this isn't part of your motion, this is just for hypothetical. If the 15% rainy day was taken off the table, I mean, would you be comfortable with the loan being paid off then? Okay.
Well, why don't I do this? I'm gonna make an amendment. I'm gonna make a motion that we do not consider action on rainy day for the balance of 22. If you want an assurance to the overall big picture, I'm willing to make that motion. If you want to second that.
I'll second that. I think that's an issue here that, you know, we'll make a decision. Also, to make a decision one way or the other, so yes.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with the rainy day option.
Yeah, but it has everything to do with, you know.
It is it could be connected, and if it raises the, you know, the level of comfort, I have no problem with it, so that's why I'm gonna make that amendment to make sure we're clear that we're not gonna take any action on that for 22.
Do we need another second?
Nick had seconded that.
Right.
So we'll take a vote on the amendment first, and then the final motion is amended.
Did you have some questioning? Okay, I thought you were asking. Okay. So are we ready for a vote? So the first would be on the amendment.
Right.
Is that correct? So the amendment is to not discuss rainy day for the remainder of 2022. All right, so everyone in favor? 2, 3. Opposed? 2, 3, 2. Motion carried. Now, on the paying off the loan. Any other discussion?
More discussion, or you want?
No, I just said it's. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, 3, 2.
So for the 23 budget, we'll make sure that line item that's there for the loan, we'll go ahead and zero that out. So we don't have to worry about that, and that'll be one of those adjustments at our next meeting that we'll want to confirm and finalize. And then let the auditor take care of the rest of that.
Are we ready to move on to the ARPA fund plan review? Okay. ARPA fund plan review and commissioner request. Your packet.
didn't hear you, speak up a little bit.
The ARPA fund plan, we're ready for that. Are you presenting that?
Yeah, we're appropriating that money to use to pay off the debts that went to the county, the shortage of income and stuff. For our community crossing right here.
No.
Oh, no. Okay. Maybe you need to specify, I'm not real sure.
Got it right here.
There are, what, four different roads?
The road for the county. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I just misunderstood everything. We got to resurface Combs Road and stuff, things, and there was an estimated price on that for $267, $246. And you got Hillcrest Road, do all those and stuff, estimated price of that road is $53,410.50. And you got Farmers Road, the estimated price of that road is $54,845. And then Orchard Heights Drive, and that price there is $49,591.50.
That comes, what does that come to,
425. We're on the same page. Oh.
Okay.
The question, go
Where do
ahead.
you want this money from, Bob?
ARPA money.
You want it from ARPA?
Yes,
Has the ARPA already been earmarked?
I think we've already submitted it to ARPA, haven't we? And they approved it.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
The commissioners, approached me, probably about 6 weeks ago in regard to adding another $500,000, to the ARPA plan, via the highway department. I was given, specific, guidelines in regard to the money, and we put together a plan, working with the commissioners. Combs Road would be paved in its entirety, and then, the commission, decided that they should put some attention into, some of the, smaller roads, and/or subdivision. So, the smaller projects or subdivision. Now, the way I have requested that, these bid out, and I believe gets us the biggest bang for our buck is, the Combs Road project would be a public work project. Has to go through, the full, public work bid process. The smaller projects, the county would provide the materials on our yearly bids, and that way, those smaller jobs can be available to the smaller local contractors that do that type of work. There's where you see the difference.
My question is, has this money not been earmarked for raises? Wasn't earmarked to $250,000, that wasn't earmarked for, just to put aside in case we needed it for something?
We had 2 different installments there. We got raised $2 million for the first one, and since then we've got another $2 million. That money has not been earmarked for anything as of yet and approved by both council and commission.
Okay, so the other money is still there.
Correct?
So
There's
this,
$2 million still there. Actually, a little more than that.
So if you remember, the last configuration that everybody kind of agreed to was we were gonna use this, of the second 2 million, we were going to do lost revenue, essentially, and help alleviate the negative funds in a roundabout way.
It's all in lost revenue.
Yes. The other part of that is we have the availability here, which is what they're proposing, to use, let's say 500,000 for simplicity, for some additional road projects that they didn't originally plan on. So they're able to do these 4 new projects with some of this money, essentially. And I noticed that equipment costs, that's not in there. Do you think that, is it safe for us to just use 500,000? Do you think the equipment, yeah, do you think that's sufficient for equipment? If you,
I actually do. I think
Okay.
the figures that we presented include what we need.
because it's basically 75,000 cushion that would go towards equipment or maybe a little bit of a cost overrun or whatever. So should we approve it up to 500,000 even then, the request? Or,
I think that was the request. Let's, just for informational purposes, go over what has already been spent for ARPA. And the highway, got 1.6, was it 1.6 million? So 1.6 million was for the highway. There was 300,000 for premium pay. Of course, we also have to take into consideration what we're paying the firm to make sure.
2,500 a month or something?
Yeah. So in this year alone, we would be paying 30,000 for.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah. So then we had talked about doing the 1 million to bring those negative accounts up to 0. And chime in here anytime anybody wants to.
That's approximately 3 million. So we're saying there's about 1 million yet to be spent, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Also got 250,000 set aside for
Yeah.
broadband or
Right.
some type of infrastructure that's not been presented by Chamber of Commerce yet. That's already been set aside by the first 2 million.
Right.
Your second 2 million, if you want to break it down, is you've got $1 million to pay off intercounty debt, $500,000 to go towards additional highway projects, and then the remaining $500,000 would be used to pay down general debt, general fund debt, which would stay in the general fund once that debt was paid down.
So that will,
You could build 500,000 in your general fund.
Because it'll all be lost revenue, which will help.
Right, yes, it doesn't matter how you spend it, how you pay the bills, payroll, whatever you want to use it for, it'll stay in the general fund. But with the highway not receiving any grant money this year, with the highway not having any additional funds to work on roads, this money needs to go to taxpayers.
And I have to ask this question, with all of the other programs that are kind of circulating out there through the Department of Transportation and those kind of things, is there anything, just playing devil's advocate here, is there anything that we could go after with the match of this money to get more money? Is there anything there that we could pursue? Or, I know it's a complicated mess of red tape, I know that.
And I'm gonna say not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Just, you forward me everything that you get, and we watch many webinars, and we will grab any opportunity that we can, but right now, we don't see anything
Okay.
that's there to grab.
And we don't want to sit around and wait for them, so, okay. I was just curious if there's some kind of a match, small bridge grant program, things like that, you could turn 500,000 into $1 million, but as long as we've reviewed that, then it's just a direct project type of thing.
You look at those federal fund opportunities and the price of a bridge project is still $150,000, now it's a $500,000 bridge.
Yeah, because you have to follow their standard,
Federal guidelines.
essentially.
So it makes absolutely no sense to build a $500,000 bridge and have a $100,000 plan to go with it.
Yeah.
Do the same thing in-house for $200,000.
So you might as well do it and say you did and whatever, okay.
my
Yeah.
question is, What's the time frame on this money, Jim?
Well, a couple of things. It has to be spent. If you do not spend it, it goes back.
Right.
It's not a single
This
year.
year?
No,
2020.
not this year. So we're fine this year and there. This is memory. I believe that by it's 2026. But that's filling up my memory, but we're not under a time crunch today, no.
Nick, the only thing to answer your question as well, we are under an inflation crunch. The longer we wait, the higher. When we started out 4 years ago, it cost about $80,000 to pave a mile of road. We're at $190,000 today.
Which no one knows if it's gonna get worse or get better.
Well, fuel's not getting any cheaper, so asphalt's not gonna get cheaper either.
Question. Can you use ARPA money to do the county's portion of community crossing? So is there a capability of going after more community crossing monies, then that's kind of more bang for the buck, or it has to be separate?
You only get $1 million a year anyway.
Yeah.
Tell you that.
Well, but just hear me out here, we've sent our community crossing money back for our spring installment when we have ARPA money. So, are we gonna fall into that again if we can use ARPA money if we have until 2025, 2026 to spend it, when instead of sending community crossing money back, if we do get $1 million, that's an additional million, do you understand what I'm saying? If we can use
We would
ARPA
never send $1 million
money.
back. The reason we sent the $100,000 back, it wouldn't pay the road.
Right.
That's the difference.
Because you
With this
couldn't come
plan,
up,
we can
because you
do
just couldn't come
twice.
up with
We
this
can do community
62,000.
crossings and ARPA funds.
Yeah, we're not gonna take away from any community crossings opportunity. You know, we've earmarked it and we're gonna do it.
Right.
But this is in addition, this is separate. It's in addition to that. Yes.
Right, but I just want clarification for myself, because we got $100,000 for community crossing from spring. We couldn't come up with the $62,000 was the county portions, so we sent back the $100,000, but couldn't $62,000 of ARPA money been used? So in future community crossing potential, can we use the ARPA money to come up with that as the county's portion of the community crossing instead of just paying it all right now?
That's possible.
You get,
So to ask that, but that's grant money to pay grant money. And it's clearly not one of the 5 recognized.
Yeah, since it's federal money versus state program.
That'd be a federal grant
Yeah.
paying a state grant, that I think be cautious. It can be looked in further if you want that, but I would be very cautious in doing anything like that tonight. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I see where you're going with that.
all I'm
That's a
saying is,
good
has it
question.
been looked at, has that avenue
Yeah.
been looked at? Because why continue to use county lit edit money if you have the possibility of using money that's given to us through ARPA to continue to fund these projects?
Yeah, and we want to do both is the thing. And I don't know why the money, because we could have used part of our match. We budgeted to pay that additional.
And that's what I was gonna say.
So,
Some other counties, not all of them, but some other counties sent money back also because the issue at hand was when we first submitted, the grants, we were working, in a pretty good economy. And then inflation hit, so it wasn't what we budgeted for.
so we were gonna eat the overage, is what you're saying.
It wasn't what we
Okay.
budgeted for.
Yeah, so then you pay for it, but then you're short on the rest of the year.
Council was gonna provide the money was there, it was
Yeah.
way over what we had budgeted for.
So even if you could have used part of the 333, which would have been legitimate,
Yeah.
you would have overspent that a little bit because the cost went up and we're eating it. And you would have had less left for the rest of the match in the next round.
Yes.
That's why you sent it back. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense now. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, I have a question here.
Before you move on,
Pardon?
Vic,
Oh, Oh, go ahead, Victor, I'm sorry.
Right across the street here, you have the Community Foundation. They have a view on what the county's needs are as well. Janet Rummel is extremely bright. And she's right across the street. He's smart. So, the Owen County Community Foundation for.
There's, Victor, over the past 2 years, there's been Okra grants that have been distributed to the county, and it actually went through her office and then was accepted through here. And so I know that's one example, probably not what you're looking for there, but there is some of that going on, collaboration between the Chamber of Commerce and Janet's office with us.
I'm not a fan of the chamber.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my concern right here. And I knew, Sheila and I talked about this, and I knew when we got done, there was gonna be only 300,000 left. And this is where it's all gone. Of course, the 1.6 million of the first 2 million was to the highway, 300,000 was premium pay. Peters is 30,000 a year, so that for this year and next year would be 60,000. 1 million to bring both of those negative accounts up to even. 250,000 for broadband or whatever. And then the 500,000 that we're discussing now would come to 3,710,000. So if that just leaves less than 300,000, which is the only thing that concerns me.
That's after this 500?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that would give us 290,000 left.
Just, it's not obligated after
Right.
admin costs, okay.
What about interest? How much interest does it draw?
A little bit, some revenue. Is that going into the general fund as revenue?
I believe it is.
Yeah, okay. And you said the 30.
The comprehensive plan to rewrite the land and zoning ordinance, for example, which is gonna cost probably $100,000.
I think my question here is if we, spend all of it right, too quickly, and then we come up with something that's just my concern.
Kind of like an emergency
Right.
need.
I think we have to 26, if that's right. I think it was 22, so that's 4 years. I don't think we're gonna have a problem sending anything back,
No.
because somewhere along the line, we'll spend it.
Well, the process is for the commissioners to do their part, then to come to us. I don't know that not all of this has been approved and came here, right? So we can make that decision when it happens.
The 250,000 for the broadband has not been.
Right.
Right.
It's just out there.
It's kind of earmarked.
It was all in buckets, so I don't know what,
And the reason the commissioners bring it to you is number one concern of the taxpayers of this county.
I think Madam Chair would just please to either make a motion or move on.
Right, I agree. It's the mind of the council.
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we proceed in earmarking up to 500,000 for additional road projects as the commissioners have presented.
Second.
Motion made by Anton, seconded by Amy. Any more discussion? Oh,
Evidently not.
So, before we vote here, I'd kind of like to touch on competing priorities again, what, clearly, road building and road maintenance is, top tier. So what other are we looking?
Originally, that 500,000 was going to be earmarked for raises for the courthouse employees that had not gotten raises for, and I'm not sure exactly what happened with that. But,
That was your folks' choice to do budget hearings, you just chose to take raises on.
no, well.
Yeah, Anton's shaking his head yes, and we had that discussion.
Well, we did have the discussion about raises. I don't think we agreed that that kind of money is used for funding it because it's one-time money. It's not something that we get on a regular basis. Now, indirectly, it can help our financial position, which allows, in an indirect way, and we are doing that with lost revenue. But at the end of the day, we still have unspoken for funds that can be used for any purpose that is allowed through ARP, and roads and infrastructure is an allowable expense. And again, costs are only going to go up. This 425,000 in just 1 or 2 months from now is not going to be 425,000, and next year it's not. So if there are needs for the roads, and that's the priority, then what are some other alternatives?
Well, and now that you've spoke on that, I kind of remember my feeling on the matter, and the bottom line is, it was because it was a one-time approach to a long-term problem, I guess, and that was the sustainability of carrying the raises over the next several years. So, while it would help the current environment, it wasn't going to go beyond the amount of time that the money would be gone. So, if there's, a certain amount of that one-time money could look at, and I think we did try to explore, whether it was a one-time payment or something that could be done, but I never did see any real traction for it, so.
I still would like that,
I'd like to say, I know inflation is real, but I also would like to say, I think, as far as my statement, I didn't go premature. I'd like to see us carry that over to next year. And there could, who knows? But then again, that's my point.
And also, we need to think it could end up just like the jail. Look how much more we're gonna have to be paying for the jail compared to when we started talking about that,
So maybe I'm kind of the swing here based on some of the things that's being said. We don't have to rush to failure on this if we need, another month to think it over.
That would be my preference, but the motion's been made and seconded, so.
But there's a vote to be taken.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'd call for it.
All right, so the motion's been made to earmark 500,000 of the ARPA money for the highway department for these specified roads. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I don't want to hear that we don't want roads.
No.
I just want to think this thing over a little bit if there are competing priorities.
Appreciate your point of view.
So can we then reconsider then at our next meeting? Will there be another update then in cost and, okay.
Okay.
The only thing that would be different, I think the commissioners would try to get some small projects done this year, and if we push it off another month, that won't happen. It will be in 23. There's no way that I can make that happen.
And to Andy's point, and I respectfully, accept that, the money's not going anywhere, it's still there, and if there needs to be some time, there needs to be some time, but.
And it is being interesting.
Yeah.
Councilman, do you want any information as far as the other, the lost recovery, what we're talking about, general fund? I don't care if you do or don't, I guess so I can be prepared. If you want, like, the mechanics of what that would look like or anything, if we're going to do that.
Are you
I'm talking about,
regarding
I'm talking about
the,
highway whatsoever, but the lost recovery, there was discussion by the council of getting that money into the general fund, so there could be it would be Dutch in our two historically red funds.
right,
All I know,
definitely.
you want information on how that would look like with mechanics.
Well, and I thought we had already long voted for
That's
that,
what I thought.
and so it should be in motion.
No, it hasn't been.
No?
I
And
wasn't,
again, this comes to you
I
for
thought we did.
appropriation, it comes back to the commissioner for final approval.
and if it is, that's what, I just want, that's why I'm just trying to make sure if that's been voted.
Yeah, I thought we were good with
vote
that.
on that, we did vote on that, and I think that was the meeting that I came to the commission.
Okay, then we can start on the mechanics of that, okay.
Yeah, I think Burton wants to refund a large amount of money to taxpayers. So I think that should kind of come in, if you look at your, that's all going to highway.
Kathleen?
I have a statement question, I'm not sure. But as a department head, I feel that I would not be doing my job as department head if I didn't say anything. I 100% understand that most of the complaints that commissioners get are about the roads, like 99% of the complaints are about the roads. I 100% agree with that. However, have we looked at any other departments and how ARPA money can be spent to benefit other departments, to possibly utilize programs within those departments as well? Because I know that public safety, ARPA can be spent for public safety. I have programs that I would like to do that I can't fund, council can't fund because we have no general funds money. But I feel like we're only looking at county highway because that's what the commissioners get complaints about. Because I don't think you wanna get complaints about public safety. So, I'm just saying, I understand that, but this is a lot of money that could potentially be distributed to help several departments as well. So, that's just my opinion as a department.
Right, if we're gonna listen to the public
For
and do
clarification,
what they want, then the roads are the thing.
Right, and
You know, I mean,
that's why I
it's just
prefaced that I understand that that's the 99% of the complaints that the commissioners get are about the roads. However, as a department head, I would
Sure.
not be doing my job if I didn't bring that up.
But I mean,
So-
it's kind of the same thing as way 2 hours ago that we were talking about.
It's,
Public comments and complaints and ideas and those kind of things.
yeah, and I'd like to interject too, that it was to my understanding that there has been a lot of discussion in commissioner meetings about ARP funding. Am I correct? I think there was a pretty big initial discussion almost a year ago about what kind of projects the commissioners felt were priorities and had asked for that. I remember viewing one of those meetings. And, it was after all that the initial round was decided on. There was an ordinance and a proposal put together. Is that correct?
Proposals have to come to the commissioners for
Okay.
this money.
Okay.
You have to approve them, and then they come back to you for the appropriation, then it's all finalized. But those proposals, and there's only been one, and that was by Marcy King, and that was to do with infrastructure.
Got it.
Alright, so you had talked about $250,000 in the pay thing, right? We're talking about $500,000 worth of money. So why don't we both try to give and get a little bit here? I'll make a motion that we move $250,000 towards the highway. That's something, and then we can look at the second half.
I have a question, doesn't that have to come from commissioners?
Well, they're asking for 500,000, I would think that
I mean,
they'd
doesn't
be
he
okay.
have a plan? I'm just asking.
Can you make you know, can you work the plan to make it fit within that?
That's something that's gonna go be decided tonight, it's gonna have to go back to the highway department. Take a look and see.
So maybe we just,
I would let them regroup and if they want to revisit this at the next meeting.
Well, yeah, she's talking about additional money, you said there was $390,000 left,
290?
there you go.
Right, but
Well, the highway's not taking it all, there's still money out there.
I know, but when you think the grand scheme of $4 million coming in, I don't know what the number is that they're gonna be getting, there's how many departments in the county, then.
I'm not
it's
opposed
just
to
a whole-
anything, I just.
and correct me if I'm wrong, on the 1 million to even up both of those accounts, if I remember right, the commissioners presented that to us, and I'd have to go back and look at the minutes, but we passed that and you sent me to the commissioners meeting, that was correct, right? And I think that was the meeting that it was not allowed to be
And
discussed.
I think one thing we need to, just put my 2 cents worth in, that's just where I am. I travel the roads. My guys travel the roads, EMS travel the roads, stuff like that. It's no different than a jail project, you know, we discussed the jail project, or we discussed the slow over. The price of stuff is going through the roof. And $500,000, I know it sounds like a lot of money, yeah, it can be used for a bunch of different things, but I'm gonna have to side with the road side of it because I see what the roads look like. And we need all the help on the roads we get. Just like public safety, we understand that, but we gotta draw a line in the sand somewhere and say, we're gonna help at this point. $500,000, to be honest with you, is like a raindrop in a bucket, what kind of highway needs to fix the road. But it is a good, it's a good healthy start for them to do something. And if we can get 3 roads done or 4 roads, whatever done, 4 roads, that's a plus for the county, and that's a plus for people that's coming to this county to see that we're trying to make improvements to the roads.
And more than likely, the products are just going to increase in price, just like the construction did for the jail.
Joel?
I want to reiterate what the sheriff just said, you know, we've all seen it, prices are nothing but increasing daily. We put together these projects, these roads are terrible, these particular, I don't know if anyone you know where Orchard Heights is, go drive through it on your way home. I can assure you, these are desperate, these aren't want-tos or half, or maybes, these are have-to roads. These people pay taxes just like everybody sitting in this room. And we've got to continue to maintain these roads. We can't just let them go. If we let them go through another winter, it's gonna cost us half again more to do them next fall, or next spring when they're tore up from the freezing thaw. I understand, Councilman, would a compromise there. That's half the money. We might get 2 done, again, that's entirely up to Superintendent Melton. This stuff has to be acted on in a timely fashion. We don't come to you because, for any particular reason, other than it needs serious attention. And this issue needs serious attention.
So here's the thing, my vote was based on, hey, let's talk this over. I didn't know till after the vote that it wasn't possible to, because of the upcoming weather, to do it, so, that's kind of the reason for the delay is, I'm sorry I'm not skilled enough in highway department operations, but I didn't know that it couldn't be used this year. I'm willing to work on this if we
First
can.
of all, the ARPA plans, I'm sorry to interrupt, the way I see the ARPA plans, I'm asked to put the plans together. It's the commissioner's plan, and the commissioners have presented that, and I'll provide you with any information that you need. That is Kathleen's question, if the commissioners want to work with her department, or something that she thinks will work, then it's gotta be vetted by them first, and they present it to you. And, know.
I guess what I'm trying to say is.
Put another plan together, I'll put another plan together that fits the money.
If it's all or nothing, we already voted, okay?
Exactly.
You know, and it's set. But if there's, you know, something we can do that the plans can fit into, I'm willing to discuss it. That's my vote. And again, I think of kind of.
From my understanding, and Jim, please correct me if I'm wrong, the record keeping of the highway department on this plan has to be meticulous.
Correct.
So, Jim, please answer this question. I'll take anything in regard to repairing the road, but I believe that I will need to go back and put a new plan together, and then it has to come from the commissioners in order to fit the
Right,
right.
that's the appropriation was voted out.
Right, so I believe that's what needs to happen.
Okay.
Well, and so I think in all fairness then to the commissioners, if there's no point in them spinning their wheels, if there's no clear threshold or point where they're gonna be given something that's gonna work, if that makes sense,
They may
so,
very well to have me present the same plan at the next meeting.
yeah.
The commissioners may, at their next meeting, to do something reduced.
So
It's their call.
is there some kind of direction we can give them? Because if there is gonna be some kind of road projects funded, we don't wanna keep delaying this more and more. Is there any kind of a limit or something we can give them to help with coming back to us at the next meeting?
And actually, one of these roads has had 2 insurance claims on it. It's a hazard to the county. It costs the county money, paying insurance claims.
What was it, Nick? Nick, you said my name.
You're still wanting to refund money to the taxpayers, right, out of ARPA?
We're not refunding anything, we're giving it back to them as far as going directly to the roads. They pay taxes for fuel, so we're giving them a new road
All right,
or a
let's,
repaired road.
But you're wanting to give money back to the taxpayers as opposed to apply it to road.
No, that is totally incorrect.
we need to move on.
on.
We need to move on. I think okay, Brett has been trying very hard to.
Can we make sure that if we need to take action on the $1 million to retire the money we've already spent, that we go ahead and take that action tonight? We're not absolutely sure that
Everybody knows that's where it's going.
They're saying it didn't go back to the commission, we know that.
If you want to.
So do we,
Let's vote on it.
okay, let's do it. All right.
When this ARPA money started, the state had very strict requirements on it. We
Right,
couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. We waited a little bit, now we can do a little bit more. We waited a little bit longer and come more. Versus spend it now for like road and stuff and things. And we don't have to spend it today, but every time a commissioner bring a plan to you, that has to be through Burns and whatever it is, right, Jim?
Well, they're just again, so the policy is it goes to the commissioner's board, the plan. The buckets have already been established, the county council does the appropriation, it's a 2-step process. Council, my memory absolutely is faulty, could be faulty, and I can be absolutely wrong. I'm just stating to you, I don't recall an actual vote on the appropriation for the 1 million, but I could be wrong. But what I'm saying is, if you have done it, and if you even did it again, it wouldn't void anything.
Right,
We could
okay.
just get started on
I'm
the.
gonna make a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna make a motion that we appropriate $1 million for the,
Lost revenue.
lost revenue.
I second.
Motion made by Andy, seconded by Nick. Any discussion? So this is lost revenue that will go to even up those 2 accounts in the red. Okay,
Yeah, not directly, that's
right,
not
yeah,
allowed,
I know
but
how that works.
highway and general fund are both the sources for those.
Right, right. Okay,
Call
so
for a
let's
vote.
call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And for the record, if there's some way to talk about, if 30 days puts us to where we can't do these roads, we need to have a conversation on that and see what we can come up with.
Okay, next is our public hearing. I will open the public hearing for additional appropriations approval. These ones are in front of you.
Madam Chair, we like that.
How did that end up?
We had really discussed that early on,
Okay.
but, if you guys wanna discuss it some more?
No, I didn't.
Madam President, I respectfully request that you reconsider having the executive session. I know you've had, and this matter has been discussed in the public forum, but I can't discuss things particularly in regard to personnel in a public forum.
Right.
And I think it is important for me to be able to speak freely, and I cannot.
But that's kind of why we wanted to
Yeah.
do the executive
So I
session.
respectfully request you have set a date for that meeting, so I can speak with the council, and I would agree. Especially request, because I know that is by invitation only, that you invite Ms. Whiting to the office also.
Do we want to do that before our next meeting, since that's coming up,
That's like 27th.
October 27th? Right.
That.
Will that be enough time for advertising, assuming it's done correctly by the
Yeah.
paper?
Well, it's done correctly, but
Yeah. Hell on
So, I mean, do we have enough time? With the paper? Oh, that's such a pain.
it would go in.
You guys, a meeting 2 weeks after
Just so you
that?
know, I
But we
was
have
just
to,
told
we have
there's
to
a meet and
advertise.
greet on the 27th with candidates in Freedom, if that makes a difference.
Do what?
There's a meet and greet for candidates on the 27th in Freedom, if that makes a difference. Doesn't affect me, I'm fine.
27's fine with me.
It would be before the meeting, like it was supposed to be for this one.
So our public hearing is at 7?
Do what?
No. Got that sheet.
So, I mean, do we know if the 27th could, if that would give us enough time to advertise?
Yeah, so our regular budget work is at 7 that evening. So if we did it, we would do a 6:30 again.
So we just shoot for it. I mean, there's a lot of variables out there with the paper and everybody else, but if we shoot for it.
Yeah, let's try to do it. Would 6:30 be enough time? Do you want to do 6 or 6:30?
Whatever works.
Everybody think?
I apologize, I stepped out there, is there a vote by executive session?
We haven't voted on it yet, we're trying to decide.
Well, I have to address the council on that. First of all, my job here, like I am the Owen County attorney, so that means at this point for all departments. County council, you absolutely have statutory right to hire your own attorney in this area. The only reason that I've rudely interrupted your meeting is there is no such thing as a general executive session. That does not exist. To have an executive session, by memory, there's 15 specific statutory codes. It has to fit one of those codes. So it would be very important for the county council, if you're picking an executive session, it has to be advertised by the statutory code and then spelled out. If there's not a statutory code for that, there is no mechanism, there is no method to have that. So I'm not here to tell you to have one or not, but I think I have an absolute duty, if you're going to have an executive session, it must follow the exec code, it must have statutory authority, or it cannot happen.
So where are those 15 codes?
Well, I mean, there's no statute, I mean, some of them maybe would obviously not apply, I mean, like collective bargaining or different things like that. But general and personnel, the general, I didn't know this was gonna come out, the general one is that in order to have a personnel, discussion, the body calling the executive code generally has to have the authority to hire, or to fire or engage in that. Respectfully, it's my understanding of the county council, you would have the authority to have positions or not to have positions. I don't know, again and again, you have to listen to me, I am an attorney, but I'm not sure that the fiscal body itself has one of those authorities to actually hire or fire.
So, without, and I understand the situation you're in, Greg, and clearly there's a lot to be said on some things that, you know, but the bottom line is, my opinion is this. I'm just, there are a lot of different reasons why I feel the way I do on a position at the highway department right now. So I don't know that those would change with an executive session anyway. The reasons are financial, they're, you know, workflow throughput, a lot of different things. So, you know, executive session or not, for me, I'm not concerned about it. If you guys want to have one, I'll be there, but that's how I feel.
Everybody think. So what are, I mean, I guess my question is on, you just named personnel. I mean, what are the
But
other
it's not,
14?
it's not a general exclusive, I mean, inclusive, I misspoke. It's not just a general inclusive, we want to hear about personnel matters, let's have an executive session. That is not correct. Normally what you have is if you have the authority to terminate, or if you're having personnel as far as interviews. But you're the fiscal body is what I'm saying. I don't know that personnel issues per se fall under the province of the fiscal body. The fiscal body determines clearly the salary ordinances or the number of positions. You want 10 people here, 12 or 15. But I don't know off the top of my head that an executive session fits within the province of what it sounds like for discussion, and I don't know.
Oh, I have a question, Jim.
Sure.
I mean, because this executive session, this is the second time we've discussed this, because we were gonna do it,
Right,
and it didn't get,
I was not present. The only phone call that I got was that there was a problem with
I think,
advertising.
weren't you sitting like right
Yeah,
outside
but
the
I
door?
wasn't, I was not present
Okay.
of that or involved in that decision. What I'm saying to you, I'm here and I'm present, and I'm saying, when I received a call from the auditor, said that there was a problem on the notice. Got that, and then I think what further complicated that was Monday being a holiday, weekends, holidays don't count. I had a follow-up question, auditor, I said, and you, not no more of a statement. And remember, on any executive session, there has to be the site, the statutory code has to be cited, and the best practice is cite the statute and also the language with that statute. I can clearly state to the council, if it doesn't fall in one of those provinces, there would be no statutory authority to that. That's why I'm interrupting your meeting. I don't want you to schedule something if there's no statutory authority. I'm not crystal clear exactly what you're calling the executive session on. Obviously, you can understand the general topic, but I don't understand the specificity of exactly what you're looking for out of the executive session.
Well, the reason I asked for it, I think I can answer that question. And Andy, I respectfully understand what no means. I understood the vote. So, but there's been a lot of question there's been a lot of innuendos. And there is no way for me, as the head of that department, to bring that forward, other than that, because I cannot do it in this public meeting. And everybody here, I think we know that, so that is the reason I respectfully ask for it. And if the answer is no, then so be it. But that's the reason I asked for it.
I think everybody's in that boat. My thing is, something was brought up earlier about January, the potential for the role. I'm gonna make a motion that we rescind the position until, we're ready and confident that it's the right thing to do. A lot has happened in a lot of different areas, and I don't even wanna, my personal view is, Jim's right, there is specificity to these, executive sessions, and, I really do think it's gotta be looked at hard, so with that in mind.
So what are we looking at, like, that's what I'm.
Talking about pushing it till the first of the year, and
But
starting it
that's-
on the first of the year.
We're not having an executive session.
Yeah, I'm saying no executive session.
Yeah.
But I'm like Jim, I didn't ever really know what it was for. You're looking at LAO and budget.
Well, the bottom line is, I don't think there's any secret. There's been a ton of pushback and finger pointing, and I think,
But it was legally done. That's the thing I'm saying.
Amy, I'm telling you right now, there's a lot on this. I've made a
Well, then we need to
motion.
listen to what the public's saying on wanting roads. If we're gonna listen to them on one issue, whatever they're saying, I don't know because nobody's called me, but, I mean, we know that people are calling daily, hourly, every minute, complaining about roads.
And
I mean,
I think
that's
we're
public,
going
so
to-
we need to, as far as the ARPA money, if we're gonna go, I've had all these calls and public, then we need to listen to it in all aspects, I think, my opinion.
So I'm open to the discussion on the
I just want
road.
for it to be done, if it's no, it's no, but it needs to stop.
Oh, I think there was a hold on that position, on that funding. I don't know any that would do anything.
Well, I think the last language was until an executive session. What I'm doing is taking out that and just saying no action.
Until the first of the.
Or we come to the point where we wanna take action, but as of right now, I don't think it's
So
appropriate.
you're saying you're not lifting the hold, you're just saying.
Well, let me say this.
Mention the executive session, you want to clarify.
Yeah, I want to take out any language associated with the executive session and rescind the movement of the position from a truck driver to an officer.
So now he has another position for a truck driver, is that right? Did you just go back to the?
It's back to the-
I just wanna
Right.
make sure.
Yeah.
So your motion is.
Even in 23.
I'm saying that we can,
Because that's in my budget,
That's
just got
totally
approved.
not what we voted on.
I think the main, right now, probably would be, the good clear cut thing would be what, till the end of the year? Because it was approved in the 2023. It was
Okay.
just this, that's my understanding.
Okay.
I mean, then we could.
all right,
Just, you make your motion the way you.
no, I'm fine with that, if that's something that is suggested to be stipulated, I'm not opposed to it, I'll add that friendly amendment.
So then, do we have a second?
Okay, so the motion, the concern is that, from the finances is the concern here?
That's part of it.
So you're saying that because of the financial situation in the highway department, we don't think that it's a good time to proceed with that change that was proposed to us a month or so back?
And that's my concern,
Is that correct?
the financial.
That's some of it.
Okay.
Some of it relates to the tasking within the job. Again, whether it's better suited for a project type thing.
Oh, okay, okay. What Brett was referring to.
Better suited for
What do you, okay.
A project, like a temporary position.
I just have a question. Financial thing, I think, is have to do with sort of improvement. Correct?
Yeah, we're talking about the rest of this year.
That's my job. Sorry.
Okay, so let's reiterate the motions on the floor for, what I,
Well,
say something.
Madam Chair, there wasn't a second.
Yeah.
I asked that.
I
Was there a
didn't know
second on
we,
your motion?
I will,
Okay, so I made a motion, then during discussion, Anton's brought up some questions.
right,
And I don't know if he's done with those. He asked
are you done with the
what
question?
my,
That answered my question.
Okay. So motions on the floor, do we have a second?
So we already voted to take action and nothing's changing.
nothing is changing, but I believe the last motion said
Right,
until an executive session.
right, so we're just changing
And
that
Jim mentioned that there is a
Can't be
pretty
a-
specific or narrow legal reason to have a finance. And I've read through them, and the last time the council had an executive session, was concerning employee issues according to 514-1561B9, which seems pretty specific. And that, if you read that, is to discuss a job performance evaluation of an individual employee. But that doesn't really jive, I think, in this situation. So maybe we do need to, I'll go ahead and second the motion just for clarity, because if there can't be an executive session, then we need to clear that up.
Right.
We don't need the ambiguity.
Right.
That's all I'm asking.
As long as that's the only change.
Motion's been seconded, do we have any more discussion?
Yes, I'm unclear. Okay, we're removing the executive request,
Right,
but we're asking that they still be held on hold.
until
For the,
until
2023.
Is that it? Is that right, Andy?
Yeah.
sure.
Very good question.
Okay.
I just want to be clear, I asked for that so I could speak freely to the council. It didn't need to go into this, this big discussion. But that's all I wanted it for, so I could speak freely.
I think that's kind of why,
That I can't do in public meetings, so.
Give it a call, give it a call.
I think that's
So-
what we all wanted the executive session
So
for, and so,
that's what I wanted. So thank you.
okay, so motion's been made and seconded. Any other questions to put this position on hold until 2023? That,
I'll call for a vote.
all those in favor? All those opposed? Are you abstaining, Nick?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. 3-4, 1 against, and 1 abstain.
So these additional appropriation requests, several. Is anybody opposed to, as a lot of them are to Greg? My gosh, the prosecutor's been here all night, and I'm sitting here thinking, is it just for that one?
So there's two things going on. There's the public hearing, for which is the second step of additional appropriations from action at the last meeting.
Mhm.
Then there's new appropriations for advertisement consideration at the next meeting.
Right.
That's where the prosecutor comes into play. So you'd have to open a public hearing on the existing.
Right. So at this time, I'm gonna open the public hearing for these, additional appropriations you have in front of you.
Was you thinking about Andy putting them all together?
Sure.
I mean, I just,
So you'd have to first open the hearing.
I did, I thought I did.
Okay.
Did I not? I am opening the public hearing.
All right, so,
Somebody say.
so there's 40,000, funding, jail housing, 4906 to meals for inmates, which is 1170, 38,400. There's also, 32,000 from, coroner general to 1,007, 2,300. From the general, coroner general, $500 for mask, gloves, and body bags, account number 1,007, 22,500. Motor vehicle highway, 27,500, account number 23200. Polymer trucks of Terre Haute, truck 37 repair.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
By $171 from motor vehicle highway, account number 1176-22200 for reimbursement fund of case number 60C01-21111-56-000-625, $915.88 from local road and street, to 1169-23,500. And $932.61 from motor vehicle restricted, account number 1173-11300. Or amount 4,750, prosecutor user fees, account name prosecutor equipment, 2,500-2700. And lastly, from county general to circuit court interpreter for the amount of $582.17. Those are the appropriations. I hope that made sense. Having read those, I'll make a motion that we approve the appropriation request as presented.
Have a second?
I'll second that. And that's for the second read? Item
Yeah.
1 through 6?
Right. Questions?
I have one question.
Uh-huh.
Is everyone, and we don't have that, is every one of these, have legitimate funding?
This is our second reading of them.
This is our second reading?
Right, this is the public hearing for these.
We have this under new business.
No, this is the public hearing for additional appropriation approval.
Okay.
So motion's been made.
So this has to be advertised?
It's already been.
It's already been advertised.
Well, I was asleep. Okay.
Motion's been made to approve these. Is there a second?
There was.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Anton, I didn't hear you. Okay. All those in favor?
Howard's giving the money.
Yes, it is.
Take a break in a minute.
Are we advertising the transfers?
Okay, do you want to take a break, or do you want to,
I said we push.
Worry about it.
okay. All right, new business. Oh, I will close the public hearing.
I see there now.
New business, additional appropriation requests.
Okay, Andy, I apologize, I see it wrong.
All good, all good.
Forgive me.
So we're getting the transfer thing? Wanna take a shot at it, or?
So the next item on the agenda is the additional appropriations that are new.
Right.
All right, so, this includes the prosecutor's request, but he stepped out. It looks like, he's got a project that, he's been working on, a collaboration on that, and all the documentation's been provided. It looks pretty good. I don't know if there's anything else to add on that. Coroner makes sense. And then the sheriff has jail housing for meals. Surprise, surprise. Well, unless there's any specific objection to these,
Can we,
I,
wait a minute, let me
Okay.
check that. Okay. So most of them, okay.
you want me to go ahead and summarize them in a motion?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we advertise for additional appropriation out of the following. Fund 1,000 for $500, coroner, mask, gloves, body bags. Fund 1,000, coroner, $32,000 for autopsies. Fund 4906, jail housing, $40,000 for meals and inmates. And prosecutor user fee fund 2,500 for equipment, $4,750.
Okay, I will second that.
okay, I just had, okay, there's a, I just,
We're all glad.
the only question I have on that is, I mean, we've gotten this, the zero expenditures and everything, is there any place that, like the coroner and the, not the autopsies, but like the, $500 for the masks, gloves, and body bags, could she transfer that out of,
She could.
yeah, like, I mean, she's got, there's tires that's not been expended, that's 500, uniforms, 400. I don't know, I mean, I'm just.
No, I don't think this. Normally, yes, Polly, I would say so, but in light of the fact that the coroner is not here, and the fact that we're talking low dollars, she may also have certain expenses that are, there's still 2.5 months to go here in the 22 budget year. And I'm sure there will either be some spent or a need to transfer by the time the end of the year rolls around.
Okay.
But I agree with your question. I think if she had $10,000 sitting there that was unused, I'd be wanting to hold this. But I don't think that's a concern necessarily here.
Okay. All right, and that's my only question. So all those in favor? Motion carried. So those will be advertised for the next.
Be advertised.
Okay.
We already did soil and
We
water.
already did soil and water.
Sheriff's Department?
Sheriff's Department.
Got, 2 employees that are now salaried. Employees that have time on the books, still have to be paid out. They advertise for the amounts that you have in front of you. I believe that amount will be reduced just a little bit, but we went ahead and advertised for this. salary employee, they cannot carry any time on their books. None.
Yeah, so when we go from
No said, no nothing.
non-exempt to exempt, we need to make sure that they're zeroed out. There shouldn't be any,
What's the dollar amount, do you know?
You're right there.
it's on this sheet right here.
Oh,
Yep, about 17,000.
okay, here it
270,
Yep.
Which fund do you propose? You're open?
Sheila said they've been taking out of rainy day.
The riverboat?
Riverboat,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That,
How much we have in it?
yeah, we need to know a correct amount, because I think the balance that was, the $300,000 balance that was there did not take into consideration the 200,000 that we had taken out for, or the extra fuel, did it?
Do we have the ability to look that up, Beth?
No.
Let's-
So I'm not sure we have, I mean, I don't think we have 300,000 in there now. I mean, actual unappropriated.
And we bring back on the 27th.
Well, let's just double check here real quick. So riverboat, at least as far as the balance that's printed, is 338,485.
So we would be,
And there have been expenditures, there was about 16,500 spent, all of the 200,000 that was put for fuel is not gonna occur in 1 month. So as far as cash balance versus obligation,
I just wanted a
Yeah.
clear picture.
even if you took the whole amount out, there's still enough to cover the 17,
Right.
The fact that it's 338, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, fuel, how much was it, 250 or 200? Do you recall, 200? So there's 138 anyway, worst case scenario.
So you feel comfortable making a motion?
I would, I'll make a motion, we advertise out a riverboat, Fund 1191, in the amount of 17,270.81 to cover the liquidation of unused time for the two positions, jail commander and chief deputy, which are going from non-exempt to exempt.
Motion made by Anton, seconded by Nick.
And these numbers were verified and confirmed with the auditor's office and HR record.
Current, but I'll tell you, that number will go down.
Okay,
Because I believe the chief did, I know he has, but we had to go ahead and do an advertisement tonight.
got it, but in the meantime, or in the final weeks or whatever, he had maybe some time or
It's
something.
gonna come down, it's gonna go next time. to another employee.
And who seconded that?
Nick.
Nick, okay.
Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, let's see,
Highway Department,
do you have anything else?
I do have one thing. At the beginning of the year, we borrowed $40,000 from jail housing for video workstation. Okay? In order to get our vehicles. We get $10,000 in every month, so in November, when we get our allotment of money, that $80,000 that we borrow will go back to jail housing. The loan will be paid internally, but it'll be done next month.
Okay, great. Do you have anything, Bob, on the highway department?
Can you make sure, real quick on that internal loan, can you make sure that that's definitely on the agenda in November? We want to go on record as having closed that out or show some indication that that's no longer in force. Because we know how some of those records have been lost, so.
Yeah, and that's what you're meeting, and I'm not sure we'll have the deposit at the time we have your November meeting, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We'll still bring it up to the meeting, let you know, once that deposit gets here, $80,000 will be paid.
Okay. Since nothing on the highway department, salary ordinance confirmation summaries.
Probation transfers are next,
Where's that at?
and that's number E, or letter E.
We have it, we don't do transfers.
Well,
Are they in-house?
these are between some funds, some different grant funds. She's got some transfers here that to cover some different areas and move some things around. Any comments on them?
I can go through real fast if you want me to. The 275 is just thinking there's gonna be more money that needs to be in for group insurance. So there's a little extra in wages, so we're just taking from wages down to group insurance, and that's in adult probation users fees. In the pre-trial grant, Natasha got it to move up $1,000 for salaries. So that goes from contract to wages. Then remember, we reimburse back. So in pre-trial, the wages are going to general fund wages. And then when we asked for the raises for Kevin and Bert, we said we would get the money. So we're asking, and we've got to kind of do one to do the other to do the other. It's got to be hop to hop. It's just the way it's got to look to do it. Asking the probation, the 0235 to reimburse them 112 in project income, that same amount that we just moved. Reimbursement in Justice Partners, and we did find out that Justice Partners are going to have another 4-year grant, so we will get another grant, so we will be coming to for additional appropriations to put that in there. But that is just reimbursing from Justice Partners, 9153 into 1122.
And you said that was a 4-year extension?
Well, it's the 4th year.
Fourth, sorry.
So just one more year. So they said it was for 3, and then we didn't think it was gonna be 4, and so they.
Okay.
And then the last one, we didn't have enough money in, the grant to cover all of the insurance, so we're taking it out of another fund now for that everybody gets paid. So we had just some money left over in that, so we wanted that to be moved to the wages. So it's all trained, and it's a lot that you gotta, to do, like some of them, you have to do one first to do it. And a lot of it is just the cost of insurance.
I make a motion, we grant the transfer funds that she has mentioned, which
I'll second.
gives explanation on it.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Anton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you, Donna.
And I'm,
I don't know, keep us straight.
I don't, so I didn't really look at it.
911 dispatch job description.
So at the last meeting, you guys requested me to bring a job description for the newly created part-time positions. And you guys should have got that in your packet. Pretty much all it's doing is it's the exact same job description as a communications officer, it's just adding part-time in front of it. Because they will have the same roles and responsibilities as any full-time employee. I do have, 2 people confirmed already that are willing to start part-time. Since our last meeting, I did lose another employee. So I am currently down 3. I have 2 vacancies, but then I have the one on military leave for the next year. So we are currently functioning a 10-person facility with 7 people. So what my plan is for the rest of this year is to, it won't go into effect until November, actually the last weekend in October. I will be having part-time employees covering every other weekend shift, working with one of my current full-time employees. And then during the week when that person is on rotation, I will be working shifts. So I will be working rotation and not in my office as much because shifts have to be covered. So I have to have people on the floor.
And I make a motion, we accept her job description for this, okay.
Right, is there a
And I will
second?
allow you to harm.
Well, Yes, that will technically allow me to hire the people that have stated that they want to work part-time for us. So,
Yeah, I'll second that. And then just to clarify for the record, that the exact classification or job category is gonna match what a full-time individual would be, which is under a civilian poll B, as they refer to it. So the hourly rate of pay that currently exists for them is gonna be the same hourly rate of pay that will apply for the part-time individual that's in that role.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
What is it?
It is 17.08.
yeah, 17.
Thank you. And we're getting people on it.
Yeah, well, I'm getting people that have recently separated to come back and work part-time. I do have interviews tomorrow, to, try to fill our 2 vacant positions, so we'll see if anyone pans out, so we're hoping. I was able to, after this is, presented and if it gets approved, I have also submitted the transfer paperwork to Sheila, to do an in-series transfer from regular wages to part-time wages to cover, the hours for the rest of the year, so if you just take into consideration the weekends that are left in the rest of the year, that's 5 weeks, so that equals 10 days. I have added on 10 more days, because it's 10 days I know I'm gonna have to have covered. I added on 10 more days just as a cushion, so it's just gonna be a transfer that doesn't need council approval of $4,100. And then nothing with, FICA, because that money is there already, and then no PER for. Yeah,
I'll call for vote.
All those in favor? Motion carried.
And if you don't mind, can you send me the Word version of this job description? Do you have the electronic copy?
Yes.
Because then I'll make sure to add it in with the rest.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna make a motion, we allow the president to sign the ordinance confirmation summaries.
Second.
Motion made by Andy, seconded by Nick.
Now, the only thing I will say, just for the record here, is you have kind of two parts here. One group is the entire sheriff's department inventory. Now, this has been looked over by 4 sets of eyes. It's been gone back and forth multiple times. I think it's all good. It reflects the changes the council had approved considering the sheriff's proposal. Every description identifies the changes that were made for every position and employee in here. And then there were a few of them that overlapped with some generic or general employee changes. You know, some people had shift changes and things like that, so those are in there as well. And then you have another set that's stapled, and that's your traditional changes since the last batch. People that have been hired, rehired, like Angela Frank went to the prosecutor's office, those kind of changes, which are more of your standard ones. So just so you know what you're doing there.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
So, motion was made
He seconded that.
and Nick seconded. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, elected officials and department head comments, and everybody's, I don't think there's, oh, well, no, except for Bob.
And thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you for
attending.
When was this executive meeting?
Executive session, we did not, we're not having one.
No go.
Nope.
Okay, I just wanted.
Yeah, Jim.
Right. Jim said that we did not fall under any of the codes, so.
There's no executive session.
The only comment I've got is thanks Beth for stepping up.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, and there's,
Any public?
public comments? Anybody? The few that's out there?
Guy in the back on the right.
That's on his phone.
Loretta, what are you doing?
Yeah, Loretta.
Yeah, and you know what, Loretta? I've got to say this. Some of you may not know the story, but she had to stay overnight here
Yes.
I did.
as a part of a project that she's been working on, and that is dedication. And I think
Well, and that's,
we need to give her a round of applause for her dedication.
Hey, might as well make it another night.
2 nights.
do you have something you wanna, I mean,
I remember it was apple butter kind of prep because I was working on the lawn and I saw her going in with family and stuff and I'm like, what's Loretta? And then Diane filled me in all this and there she is peering out the window at like 9 o'clock and I'm like, oh, Loretta. And so, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Everybody's gone, everybody, okay. Adjourned.
Now, all of those pins broke out. I don't know how many thousands of dollars.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay, so the meeting